We find ourselves in an arcanist academy called Candria in the year 594 of this world's sacred calendar. The protagonist stands in front of this extremely impressive building and expresses his admiration. He notes that he expects nothing less from the Empire's first academy, since there are so many applicants there. Our hero's name is Louis, and he is only 13 years old, but he is already determined to achieve great heights in this life. His parents catch up with him and say that he is walking too fast and they cannot keep up with him. His mother asks him if he took his ID and adds that he should watch the color of his hair. She then asks him fearfully if he would like to change his mind, since some of the candidates die. However, Louis's father stops her and says that magic is the only way to solve this boy's problem. He claims that this is the only academy in the northern part of the Empire where commoners can take the exam and be admitted. This Arcanist Academy is known for its rigorous training but more liberal approach to selecting candidates. It is also a leading educational institution founded by the imperial family of Candria. From his point of view, this is a place where the strongest great masters of this state teach, who have been honing their skills for years. Although it is quite difficult to graduate from this academy, it is within the power of any person who shows their worth. Over the last 100 years, several guardians have emerged from poor families, and most of them study here. After this, the father says that he considers this the ideal environment for studying magic. Louis says his father is right because he must risk everything to become great. He grins and declares that he is using his power to one day take over the church's shelter forever. Hearing these words, his mother begins to feel incredible surprise and pride for her son. She says that he has become so grown up and she makes him worry about the orphanage, and that makes her think she is a terrible mother. Louis says that he only survived because of her, so she shouldn't blame herself for her actions. In fact, in his past life, Louis dreams of becoming the greatest martial artist in the world, but is born with asthma. Despite being confined to an oxygen tank, his passion for martial arts never fades. He becomes a scholar who studies the theory of martial arts, and his research makes a great contribution to their development. However, another scientist steals his work and accuses him of plagiarism, taking advantage of the fact that he is a sick person. Even his parents, who don't love him very much, decide to abandon him and disconnect him from the breathing apparatus. After such an incredibly tragic and heartbreaking fate, he is reborn and transported to another universe. He is very surprised that he finds himself somewhere else, despite the fact that he should have died. Even though he is still a small child in this world, some people are starting to call him a curse. However, his dear and very loving mother says that he is her son, so she cannot abandon him. Now he has a loving family and a healthy body, which he decides to take full advantage of. His sentimental thoughts are interrupted by rude people who, for some reason, decide to push his mother. The unfortunate woman falls to the ground, unable to maintain her balance after such a vicious and treacherous push. Ill-wishers ask in a haughty tone whether a servant really decides to become a great master, and then smirk. Louis turns sharply towards this vile voice to understand who dares to do such an act. Two arrogant aristocrats appear before him, saying that they have to touch dirty commoners. Louis immediately calls them pathetic bastards and promises them that they will answer for what they just did. However, a second before the fight, his father intercepts his hand to prevent something irreparable. He tells him confidently and seriously to focus on the entrance exam instead of such nonsense. His mother also says that Louis promised not to cause trouble at the academy and asks him to be patient. Louis feels incredible anger, but he understands that he needs to somehow cope with this vengeful urge. After a while, he exhales tensely, after which he asks his mother for forgiveness. The aristocrats call him a pathetic piece of trash, and then say he's lucky he didn't get into a fight with them. After a while, they part and say that Cain is coming here, and Louis decides to look at him. Other people say that this man really looks like a nobleman and is almost shining. However, Louis treats him with disdain, realizing that he is a nobleman, which means he is a priori an arrogant bastard. After this, he takes his mother by the hand and says that there is nothing to worry about since he will definitely pass the exam. He also says that he will definitely become a great master, and this attracts Cain's attention. The other aristocrats listen to his ideas about studying magic and start laughing out loud. Louis runs towards the academy gates, thinking that in this life he will definitely become the strongest in the world. He also decides that he must protect what is dear to him, even if it means sacrificing a lot. The mother asks her husband if everything will really be okay with him, since only 20 to 30 people pass through each year. The father says that this boy is more stubborn than anyone else he has ever known. He also adds that once this guy makes a decision, he rushes forward without caring what others think. Louis arrives at the examination area and is surprised that everyone there is older than him. The director says that he declares the 106th entrance examination to the academy open with all the festivities. This man's name is Aronian Smith, and he is the director and also the invigilator for this exam. Lewis reflects on the fact that in this world there are great masters who practice secret martial arts. There are 6 ranks in total, starting from a common disciple and rising to a saint. Lewis understands that the rank of Grandmaster ranks 3rd in this hierarchy and is a privileged class. Principal Smith says that for the first test, they have to climb the steps guarded by their elders. He also says that the certificates of successful completion of the first exam are behind them. He also states that there are only 1,000 of these certificates in total, and only those who can obtain them will be allowed in. He also states that the exam ends as soon as there are no certificates left on this board. After this, he loudly announces for everyone to hear that the exam is starting and recommends that they hurry. Candidates rush forward, cutting each other off, hoping that they will be the first and easily overcome this test. However, the student on the steps says that he is very happy to welcome these applicants. After this, he activates a destructive aura and says that he welcomes them to hell, where, in his opinion, they belong. Immediately after this, he releases a powerful explosion, which spreads its wave throughout everyone present. Most applicants stop immediately, unable to withstand such incredible pressure. Most of them are immediately disqualified because falling is not allowed here either. Those who remain on their feet realize that standing before them is Lord Stein, who is the son of the Minister of Finance. Lewis, however, is not very impressed by such an attack, which does not even hurt his pride. Hearing his words, everyone else turns around, trying to understand what this boy is trying to say. Lewis says that it wasn't actually an attack, but just a release of aura meant to intimidate them. Taking a few steps forward, he says that for him, such a result is absolutely not surprising. Speaking about those who lose consciousness, he notes that these people are too weak in spirit and cannot withstand the pressure. Stein says that's exactly it, and notes that Lewis does seem to have some inner strength. Smiling, he says that there is still a huge amount of talent here and there is no place for commoners. Lewis becomes even more serious than usual again, and realizes that this is a real challenge to his strength. Meanwhile, Stein says that since servants are coming here, he will show them the place where they should be. By creating a powerful beam of fire, he says that he forces Lewis to his knees and beg for mercy. People nearby feel that it is becoming difficult for them to breathe and ask him to spare them and not kill them. Lewis continues to stand in place, watching intently as his competitors fall to the ground one by one. After this, he asks him if this is really all his lust for murder, with which he is trying to scare him. After this, he decides to remember how long he spent destroying various monsters while preparing. The uncontrollable rage and theoretical knowledge that he carries with him after rebirth help him. Lewis begins training on real monsters almost immediately, so the cost of any mistake is too great. If he doesn't show the best results he's capable of, he'll simply die in one of the battles. That is why such tests now seem quite simple to him compared to a real fight. Louis smiles proudly and says that such attempts definitely cannot work on a hero like him. With these words, he takes off and, lighting his eyes with the energy of determination, quickly closes the distance. He ignores Stein's cruel aura and continues to approach him with a speed like the wind. After this, he says that he is going to show these pathetic aristocrats who is the real power here. He also states that his lust for murder cannot be quelled by anything and that he is a formidable opponent. The energy that overwhelms him forces him to move forward and almost sets his clothes on fire. The common aristocrats, who seem like pathetic plankton at his feet, look at him with real horror. Stein also suddenly loses all his fighting spirit and feels an incredible fear that permeates his entire body. Lewis brings his fist quickly towards his face to knock him off balance and make him stop. After a few moments, he stops himself to demonstrate his intentions. However, he understands that there is no point in starting a real fight against this man now. However, for Stein, such a collision turns out to be a real humiliation that he cannot forgive. The aristocrats wonder how a small child of 13 years old manages to defeat an older student. Lewis calmly walks past his opponent and says that he passes this test without any problems. After this, he takes a few steps towards the board to take his earned pass. At first, nothing foreshadows trouble, and he already reaches out to take what he believes is rightfully his. However, Stein is too surprised by his defeat and decides to get even with him right away. After this, he rushes into the attack, completely unaware that this could lead to punishment from management. Lewis expects something like this and immediately turns around to respond to his attacker with a powerful blow. Another fight breaks out between them, causing a powerful shockwave. Stein wonders how some pathetic commoner can block his blow without magic. Principal Smith places his hand on his shoulder and tells him that he is already passing the first test, so the questions are off the table. He also says that their academy treats all applicants equally, and Stein immediately stops short. After this, Stein bows and says that the director is absolutely right, and Lewis thanks him for his fair decision. Director Smith takes a few steps towards him and says that he sincerely congratulates him on his victory. Afterwards, he quietly mentions that he is seriously concerned about the color of his hair, and Lewis tenses up. He also states that his eyes look a little strange too, and Lewis tries to figure out what to do in this situation. He decides to pretend he doesn't understand anything and asks him what exactly he means by these strange questions. Director Smith immediately puts his hand on his shoulder to make it clear that he means business. After this, he says that if he is accepted, he will help him better hide his unique appearance. Lewis reflects on the fact that he doesn't know what exactly this man is up to, but first he needs to pass this test. After this, he turns around and goes in the direction that everyone who passes the first stage of the test must go. Stein watches this and it makes his body shake, as if he still can't let go of this situation. Stein wonders in his mind why the director is interfering with the exam and remembers Lewis as his enemy. After some time, the second stage of the exam begins, and it is announced that another test is about to begin. Lewis reflects on the fact that most of those who remain here are nobles, and there are practically no commoners. A group of aristocrats passes by him and push him with their shoulders, trying to knock him down. The aristocrat looks at Lewis with irritation and says that next time no one will help him, calling him rabble. Lewis gives him his standard stern look, making it clear that he's not letting this go. One of this scoundrel's accomplices says that if it weren't for the director, Lewis would have been thrown out of here long ago. Lewis smirks and says that the person talking to him is a pathetic idiot. The aristocrat cannot bear such an incredible insult and immediately turns in his direction. Lewis sternly and harshly tells them that the great master understands much more than they do. The aristocrat immediately approaches him and asks him if he is really looking for a fight, being a pathetic bastard. Lewis keeps a straight face and only smiles a little, as if challenging this scoundrel. Naturally, the aristocrat cannot tolerate such an incredible insult and understands that this is a challenge. He then swings his fist and declares that he is going to beat the crap out of him and force him to his knees. Lewis realizes that the time has come to demonstrate his incredible hand-to-hand combat skills. With one powerful movement of his fingers, he hits his opponent right in the pain point. The aristocrat looks at his opponent in surprise and realizes that his body has somehow stopped moving. Lewis proudly calls his move a meridian break and prepares to complete it. After this, he adds that he is now delivering a pinpoint strike along the spiral and throwing the enemy back several meters. The aristocrats watching him look at the outcome of this duel in surprise and cannot believe their eyes. The villain falls to the ground and, under the force of incredible inertia, rolls along the ground for several more meters. The ordinary contenders, who have been preparing all this time, are surprised that someone decides to start another fight. Meanwhile, these scoundrels run up to the aristocrat and ask him how he feels. The aristocrat declares that he cannot feel his hand and cannot even move it, despite all his desire. He adds that this man is probably using poison and that this must be reported to his superiors immediately. Lewis approaches him and tells him that he uses a martial art that he has already mastered. He also adds that he is holding back, as his mother tells him, but his patience also has its limits. He also states that those who beat others must be prepared to receive a response from those who are stronger. However, before he can carry out his revenge, someone grabs his arm and prevents him from striking. Kane says that the exam is currently in full swing and fights between students are prohibited at this time. He looks at him carefully and asks if he really doesn't care if he is expelled from here. Lewis realizes that, despite his desire to punish his offenders, arguing here is pointless. He turns around and pulls his hand away, while the aristocrats begin calling him names and ordering Kane not to interfere. Kane turns sharply towards them and asks them if they recognize who he is, after which he advises them to retreat. The aristocrats' henchmen begin to get angry, but he orders them to remain calm. After that, he turns around, puts his hands in his pockets and says that they have nothing more to do here. He reflects on how the nobles, like the commoners, are all one kind of filth that he is about to crush. Lewis, meanwhile, reflects on how aristocrats use their status to do whatever they want. Kane, meanwhile, turns around sharply and approaches Lewis, saying that he is strong and brave. After this, he extends his hand to him and says that he would not mind teaming up with him. However, after a few moments, girls run up to him and ask him if he is looking for a team. Before Lewis can react, Kane is surrounded by a huge number of people trying to force themselves on him. The aristocrats nearby note that Kane is also only 13 years old, but he already turns out to be so strong. Lewis watches his potential comrade with interest and realizes that they have something in common. However, after a few moments, energy vortices appear, which attract the attention of everyone present. Director Smith says he congratulates all those who were able to pass the first stage of the test. After this, he states that they will now need to pass a test of strength in order to be able to move on. After he snaps his fingers, a specific emblem appears on the bodies of all the contenders. Cain examines it carefully and says that it is very similar to the Earth attribute sign that is applied to them. However, after a while, he begins to feel very strange, as if something is pressing him to the ground. All other people are trying to fight the sudden feeling of incredible heaviness in their bodies. The whole point is that a giant magical seal is placed on the entire arena, which prevents them from moving. Director Smith states that for the second test, they must fight in the arena while under the effects of this seal. Some aristocrats cannot believe what the Great Master's magic is capable of and do not understand how to fight. After this, they begin to look around and discover that Cain is still standing on his feet. Cain feels the pressure is enormous, but something else catches his attention. The thing is that he is not the only person who can withstand this pressure. Lewis calmly walks towards the arena, completely unaware of this incredible magic. Director Smith watches Lewis's actions closely, and an approving smile appears on his face. He congratulates him on his victory and notes that Lewis is once again the first one who can pass this test. Lewis reflects that the pressure is very strong, but for a warrior like him, it is quite suitable. Cain reflects on how he has been training for 3 years and can barely stand on his feet, while Lewis walks around as if nothing is happening. Principal Smith declares that only those who remain standing will be allowed to take the next test. He creates a special spell and says that they can choose any weapon from those offered. Lewis and the other people around him turn around to see a strange portal with weapon stands. Without thinking twice, he grabs the first sword that comes to hand, as it seems to him to be the most suitable weapon. He wields it with incredible ease, as if the sword weighed nothing at all to him. However, other aristocrats have difficulty lifting something similar and note that it is too heavy for them. Principal Smith asks them if they are ready for the next step and notes that it is time to begin. After this, he smiles and says that it is time to release the jumping slimes into the arena. After that, he snaps his fingers and disappears into thin air as if he had never been there. The aristocrats wonder what a jumping slime is and can't come to an answer. Lewis is a keen observer of all sides, as he is a true warrior, and he detects threats before anyone else. He discovers that a strange blue creature is trying to attack them from above. One of them lands on the stone floor with a distinctive sound, and the others try to figure out what it is. Some people recognize that these are the same jumping slimes that at first glance look quite harmless. Director Smith says that blocking an attack is worth 1 point, dodging it is worth 2 points, and destroying it is worth 5 points. The director says that their ranking depends on the points they score, and that only the top 100 will be allowed to proceed. Lewis understands that there are only 1,000 applicants here, and only 10% will be selected, and notes the rigor of this selection. The slimes suddenly start screaming loudly and jumping all over the arena in different directions, gradually increasing their speed. The aristocrats look at these monsters and note that these creatures do not look particularly intelligent. After this, one of them rushes forward and says that these will be very easy 5 points that will help him win. Speeding up ever faster, he already imagines himself in first place, because as he believes, he will be able to quickly destroy all enemies at once. However, this slime suddenly makes it clear that it is not going to give up its life so easily. He takes aim at the nobleman with the sword and suddenly fires his body like a cannonball. Of course, the self-confident young man does not expect such a drastic change in behavior on the part of the monster. This is why his fate turns out to be quite unenviable since he loses several teeth. Immediately after this, the slime jumps away from its opponent and already targets another aristocrat. He follows the same fate as the previous challenger and is thrown aside by a powerful blow. The people who remained standing remark that this is very strange, and they do not expect that a low-level enemy would be so strong. One of the contenders warns the others and says that they are about to be attacked by other monsters. This arena turns into a brutal battlefield in just a few seconds, but it's all part of the plan. Director Smith and his assistants closely monitor the battlefield and eliminate anyone who falls. His assistants also keep track of the points awarded to students who manage to dodge the blows. One of the assistants approaches the director and says that this year a student of a master from among the 7 sages is present at the exam. She wonders whether it is possible that the record will be significantly exceeded this year. Another of his comrades says that among the common people there are also several outstanding children. He turns his attention to Lewis, and Principal Smith suggests that perhaps he can show something else. His assistant says he hopes so too, but hasn't seen anything interesting yet. He adds in surprise that Lewis hasn't taken a single step yet, as if he were turning into a stone statue. The aristocrats wonder what he is doing and speculate that the creatures are too fast. They add that in the end, a commoner will always remain a commoner and will soon fly out of here. However, in reality, Louis stands still, as if the outside world doesn't bother him at all. At a certain moment, he waits for a slime to fly towards him and lets it get as close as possible. He then makes a small head movement to dodge this swift attack. The slime crashes into the aristocrats in front of it, who are unable to do anything to save themselves. They question how this is even possible and point out that he should definitely have been hit by this attack. Slime continues to confidently fly between the participants, trying to knock out as many opponents as possible. A large number of aristocrats who prove too overconfident are eliminated from the game. Louis, meanwhile, watches his movements closely to catch the right moment. Several of these slimes immediately start flying towards him, and this seriously complicates his ability to dodge them. The joyful aristocrats look at him and say that he will definitely not be able to dodge this attack. Louis takes on a very serious look and reflects on the fact that he actually has every chance. He remembers how he used to talk to his comrades and ask them to throw stones at him. They look at him in surprise and ask questions about whether he considers this type of training to be very dangerous. Louis tells them that everything will be okay and that they don't have to limit their power as he wants to test something. They begin to take aim and hope that he will definitely return, warning him when they are going to start. A few moments later, several large boulders begin flying at Louis, threatening to break his nose. Louis, meanwhile, continues to behave absolutely calmly, as if he were a block of ice. He recalls a hypothesis from a past life that he puts forward in order to advance his research. It trains itself to quickly transmit information from the parietal lobe of the brain to the cerebellum to speed up its reaction time. From his point of view, if this tactic is successful, one can cope with absolutely any attack and become untouchable. He reflects on the fact that he needs to gather the necessary information about the stones flying at him. After that, he automatically calculates the trajectory of each of them thanks to his incredible brain. After this, he performs several special and very fast maneuvers to avoid getting a single scratch. His comrades watching him are incredibly impressed by how easily he can dodge flying rocks. Louis decides to take a breather, after which his friends run up to him and tell him how incredible he is. They all ask him how exactly he does it and try to figure out what this interesting new technique is. Louis says it's the Void's combat algorithm, and they ask him what it even is. Louis reflects on how he is an incredible genius for being able to discover such a super technique. Thanks to this technique, he gains the ability to predict the outcome of any battle, no matter how difficult it may be. Therefore, there is no doubt about our hero's success, because he never loses again in his life. The projectile flying towards him seems to be covered with formulas that help him calculate its trajectory. Louis continues to stand in place, completely unconcerned that he might not have enough time to get his body going. Louis comes up with the brilliant idea that jumping slimes can only attack in a straight line. This creates a very predictable trajectory, making it easy to dodge these attacks. Louis makes a few quick maneuvers and notes that fighting them is not a problem in this case. He quickly counts up all the points for dodging, after which he realizes that now he needs to move on to the main action. He grips his sword and charges it with the power of his martial art, which he also manages to learn. Not wanting to waste another second on hesitation, he rushes forward and delivers a sharp blow in the process. Thanks to his martial art of swordsmanship, he destroys all his opponents at once. Kane watches his potential comrade carefully, continuing to clutch the rapier in his hands. The director's assistants wonder if this boy can really foresee the movements of these monsters. They note that this student's perception can rival that of real warriors. Kane realizes that this boy is practicing his art, so he decides that he must definitely team up with him. Louis looks around and finds that he has a sudden problem that he never expected. Another slime flies towards him, this time deciding to take revenge for its fallen brothers. Louis turns around and thinks that wielding a sword will give him 5 more points. However, just as he is about to strike, Kane stabs the slime with his sword and forces it to stop. Louis frowns again and asks him how dare he steal glasses that belong to him. Kane talks about how it could be called stealing glasses, but in reality he is not stealing them from Louis at all. After this, he makes a sharp movement with his sword to cut this monster in half. The slime bursts with a characteristic sound, splits into 2 small pieces and falls to the ground. The remaining aristocrats, who are watching this strange event, are trying to understand what it all means. Kane says that he is actually stealing the glasses from them, despite the fact that the slimes themselves do not belong to anyone. After that, he introduces himself by name and asks him if he would like to steal glasses with him. Louis continues to look at him with an extremely stern face, unable to relax even for a second. Kane states that he wants to climb the rankings, so he suggests they see who can earn the most points. Smiling, he recommends him to show his true strength to surprise everyone else. Lewis notes that Kane seems very confident and agrees after he insists. After this, he grabs his sword and charges it again with the power of martial arts, preparing to continue the fight. He says that the loser will do whatever the winner says, and Kane decides to accept these conditions. The aristocrats watching them understand that this is a very dangerous alliance that must be destroyed somehow. Some of them wonder if they can carry out Lord Stein's orders in this chaos. One of them says he has the perfect plan to deal with them. Suddenly, a small slime flies near them, and they realize that this is the perfect opportunity. The aristocrat, along with his comrades, takes aim with his bow and says that the time has come to fire. This slime flies at high speed towards Lewis and Kane, hoping to knock them out of the game. Lewis, of course, reads his move with incredible ease and delivers a swift blow, cutting him in half. However, after a few moments, it becomes clear that he does not have time to notice several arrows flying in his direction. Kane turns around in surprise, watching his comrades suddenly recoil in his direction. The aristocrats joyfully talk about how one of them hits the target, and look at their bow, which serves him well. Lewis just smiles haughtily, knowing that this is just a pathetic attempt that will definitely not be able to stop him. The aristocrats look at Lewis in surprise, not yet realizing that he can predict absolutely everything in this fight. Lewis, of course, intercepts 3 arrows at once and stops them with his fingers without much difficulty. They look at him in surprise and wonder how he can stop this attack with his bare hands. Kane says that these bastards are playing dirty, and Louis says that this is nothing more than a trifle that is not worth paying attention to. The aristocrat, meanwhile, completely forgets about the rules of this competition and decides to shoot at him again. Along with the normal arrows, he also decides to use the shadow arrow skill by using magic. Thus, one of the projectiles aimed at him becomes much more dangerous. Kane rushes to his comrade's defense and delivers several quick strikes with his rapier to block the shots. However, he is not fast enough to notice the flying magic arrow. At the last moment, he realizes that apparently this arrow will hit him in the face right now. There is a very unpleasant sound of injury, and bright blood begins to spurt in the opposite direction. Lewis manages to intercept the arrow because he reacts too quickly not to calculate the trajectory in advance. Kane asks him what's happening to his hand, and Lewis replies that the true target was himself. The assistant director says that this attack has malicious intent and suggests disqualifying the attackers. Principal Smith says that they are losing either way and asks to prepare a healing potion. Lewis, meanwhile, turns to his new friend and says that he wants to show him something. After this, he grabs his sword with both hands and asks him if he has heard anything about pain relief. Thanks to his incredible calculations, he's able to understand exactly when a good opportunity presents itself. As soon as the slime gets dangerously close to him, he turns his sword around to strike with the flat of it. After this, he again strains himself incredibly hard in order to give out the maximum of his strength. After this, he makes a sharp turn and delivers a quick blow in order to knock his opponent aside. Having received such a strong charge of kinetic energy, the slime flies away in the opposite direction with a sad look. Of course, he directs this blow strictly towards his enemies who are trying to shoot him with a bow. The leader of these villains receives a powerful blow directly to his body and also loses his weapon, which is destroyed. After this blow, he is thrown to the side, which is why he is unable to stay in the arena. Observers report that number 01438 is disqualified because he is unable to stay in the arena. Kane says that this game looks very interesting, and Lewis immediately rushes on to finish off the rest. The villains wonder how the pathetic rabble dared to try to kill one of their own using such methods. However, after looking closely at Kane, they discover to their horror that Lewis has disappeared somewhere. Too late, they realize that he has been in the air all this time because he jumped too high. Lewis takes careful aim and launches another slime at them, which runs past. This archer doesn't have time to dodge and receives a powerful blow right to his face. This blow also proves too serious for him to stay on his feet, and this scoundrel is also eliminated. The remaining nobles in the arena wonder how this is even possible and repeat that it simply cannot be true. Louis jumps behind him and tells him that he is the only one left, noting that the battle will be too easy. The aristocrat takes a few steps to the side and says that one cannot go that far because it is prohibited. However, moments later, Kane trips him, causing him to fall out of the arena. Kane thanks him for his help and asks if everything is okay with his hand, which he uses to intercept the arrow. Louis says that his wound is already healing and notes that Kane is quite good, especially considering that he is a nobleman. Kane advises against comparing him to others and asks if he has ever heard of great families. After this, he adds that great families are clans that produce many masters and sages. He also says that their influence is very great and can even rival that of the imperial family. Lewis continues to fight monsters and notes that apparently aristocrats come in all shapes and sizes. The other fighters watch them, surprised that some commoner dared to interfere in this conflict. They immediately become angry with him, thinking that they should not let him get even more points. Lewis and Kane turn around at the same time, hearing strange screams that are rapidly approaching them. A small group of aristocrats loudly shouts that commoners should simply disappear from this world. Another part of the aristocrats says that these scoundrels are targeting Lord Kane and decides to intercede. Rushing forward, they talk about how these pathetic lower nobles need to be beaten so that they know their place. Louis and Kane realize that everything is turning into chaos, so they decide to be careful and not let their guard down. Two girls suddenly start talking about how things are getting more and more interesting and are watching what is happening. One of them calls her ally Miliana and says that she needs to teach the nobles who look down on her a lesson. Louis reflects on how too many people are targeting him now and that he needs to stop getting new points. While dodging various attacks, he reflects on how the monsters suddenly change their behavior. Meanwhile, Miliana continues to fight her opponents and knocks them out. Her battle friend helps her as best she can, using her spear to knock out the bad guys. Suddenly, one of the fighters, armed with a giant hammer, begins to observe this strange crowd of little ones. He starts laughing out loud and says that this is just a wonderful coincidence. After this, he prepares to join in, noting that hitting people is much more interesting. After this, he rushes forward, declaring that he is already tired of fighting with pathetic slimes. Taking a few steps forward, he jumps into the air, starting to spin like a wheel. After this, he constantly starts shouting at them to get out of the way if they value their lives or bones. Spinning around the arena like a top, he knocks out one opponent after another, not giving them a single chance to dodge. After a while, he decides to stop for a while to quickly catch his breath. It turns out that with just one use of his magnificent technique, he gets rid of dozens of opponents. Assistant Director Smith asks if he needs to intervene, but he replies that everything is fine. The girl says that if all the nobles are expelled, they will certainly face problems. Director Smith proudly says that this place has its own rules, so there is no need to worry about it. After a few moments, he turns into a stream of bright energy and lands right in the center of the arena. He calmly turns to everyone else and says that the second stage of the exam is complete. After this, he states that they will announce the rating and results a little later, recommending that everyone wait. After this, he places a special mark on the bodies of the rest of the people so that they can rest. He also states that wounded aspirants can drink a healing potion to restore their wounds. Lewis takes a closer look at the potion and discovers that it is a very unusual power that he has not encountered before. Lewis points out that even a simple magic potion costs 3 silver coins, and Kane asks what's wrong. He also says that even if he wins, he won't bully him so he can relax. Principal Smith waits for a moment, then announces that they are now announcing the results of the second exam. Kane and Lewis ask what rank they get while looking closely at the table. Some aristocrats happily say that commoners are not on the list. But here comes the rub. He states that there is a new member in the top 5 this year, with Miliana Royce taking 5th place. Kane ranks 4th on this list of the strongest students thanks to his incredible agility. 3rd place goes to a girl named Faye Durahan, who displays incredible rage and resourcefulness. Kane wonders if Louis's name isn't on the list and he's being disqualified because of this fight. However, a few moments later, Principal Smith announces that Kane is in 2nd place with 887 points. Kane is very surprised by this distribution, after which the aristocrats become interested in who takes 1st place. Kane, meanwhile, asks him how he can score so many points, and Louis adds that it is a secret. Kane points out that he loses either way, so he must fulfill any wish Louis has. But Louis just laughs it off. Principal Smith builds tension and says that the winner will take 1st place in the count. He adds that a new challenger named Neil Gunn wins with a score of 888 points. Neil looks at the people in front of him and says that there are some very interesting guys here. A wicked grin spreads across his face, and he hopes they don't disappoint him when he fights them. Aristocrats cannot believe that the first 2 places are occupied by commoners who bypass other aristocrats. Miliana is surprised to find that Faye's hand is starting to shake from how tightly she's gripping her weapon. Smiling, she says that she would be very happy to fight this man. Stein watches this stage of the exam closely and is surprised that aristocrats can lose to commoners. He adds that this is an astonishing disgrace for the nobility and turns to the rest of the people. Meanwhile, the director's assistant says that commoners have never before occupied the first 2 places. Director Smith asks her if she knows why their association runs numerous shelters. He adds that true power has absolutely nothing to do with social status. After this, he says that those who pass the 2nd exam must go to the next arena. Kane says that Louis is almost in 1st place and wonders which of the 2 will be stronger. After some time, the action moves to the 3rd arena, which is a large forest area. Director Smith adds that it's a survival challenge called a token battle royale. He notes that each of them will be given tokens, and the upperclassmen will use magic to teleport them around the area. He also states that their goal is to collect as many tokens as possible, and absolutely any methods are allowed. Director Smith states that any applicant who loses their badge is immediately disqualified. He also states that only 10 candidates will pass, and Kane notes that they will have to split up. Lewis says that the results of the second exam are announced precisely to create the conditions for the hunt. Principal Smith smiles as he says he hopes the applicants will demonstrate their abilities. Lewis reflects on the fact that he is only one step away from admission, and he is winning no matter what it takes. After he walks a few steps, he encounters his first enemy, who calls out to him. He claims that this scoundrel is greatly humiliating them by assuming that he is in a higher position. Lewis turns around as he hears footsteps approaching and realizes he is being ambushed. The armed aristocrats say that Kane is not here, and now no one will protect him from retribution. Lewis realizes that this time the villains decide not only to attack him with bladed weapons, but also to use arrows. The whole point is that one of the aristocrats climbs a tree in order to aim a crossbow at it. Louis says that it seems that whoever is responsible for the teleportation is giving away his location. His opponent, armed with a heavy axe, orders him to be silent and accept his death. Louis spins in the air with a light jump and avoids this powerful blow, receiving absolutely no scratches. However, he is immediately attacked by other villains, who say that this time he will not escape retribution. Louis jumps into the air again, hoping that he can outsmart these villains. However, it becomes clear that too many opponents are attacking him at the same time, and this is not easy. He quickly grabs his sword and makes a sharp strike to deflect the shot to the side. After doing a few somersaults in the air and landing on his feet, he wonders what that was all about. His opponent says that he will die here, so it would be better to just surrender and accept his death. Louis easily dodges every blow and jumps over all the swift lunges. Suddenly, he hears a magic arrow flying towards him again and turns around. At the last second, he manages to position his sword in a special position to deflect the projectile. His opponent, armed with a spear, attacks again, trying to hit him in the side. After this, he wonders why he is surprised that wind arrows are flying at him. Louis continues to dodge, and this makes him genuinely confused and wants to end the fight as quickly as possible. Louis is irritated when he says that he can't read the magic's trajectory, despite all his attempts. After this, he decides to use an incredible counterattack, which he, of course, has already mastered. This counterattack is called Sen no Sen, and it allows you to strike before your opponent attacks to stun them. Great wisdom tells him that he must use the enemy's strength against him. His opponent orders him not to get distracted and says that the rest must attack together. They move towards him rapidly, hoping to cut him into pieces and finish him off as quickly as possible. However, he only smiles, realizing that he will definitely be able to defeat them no matter what thanks to his technique. Rushing towards them, he says that these are simply ideal conditions because otherwise he would be too bored. The satisfied aristocrat says that his opponent has been caught and swings his axe at his head. Louis jumps sharply to the side, taking advantage of his inhuman speed, which is inaccessible to others. After this, he decides to counterattack with his sword in order to disarm the enemy. He grabs a piece of a giant axe and uses his strength to knock the heavy opponent off his feet. Throwing his axe aside, he directs it in such a way that it hits another nobleman and wounds him. There remains only one enemy who miraculously does not die after such an outstanding counterattack. At the same time, the shooter, who has been on the branch all this time, reloads the crossbow and decides to shoot. Louis only now discovers where his final opponent is and realizes he must act now. He grabs his opponent by the arm and throws him towards him so that he takes the arrow for him. After that, he throws it aside like unnecessary trash, hoping that this will be enough. Intercepting the spear, he realizes that now is the perfect moment to get even with the archer. Taking proper aim, he unleashes a powerful throw that is capable of surpassing normal attacks in strength. After the giant spear hits the bastard, a loud scream is heard from the top of the tree. Louis immediately after this rushes past his opponents with lightning speed, striking with his sword. Each of these blows is aimed at cutting off the tokens from them and taking possession of them. Louis happily intercepts them all and says that he is now the winner and receives his reward. After this, he continues to move forward with absolute calm, realizing that nothing threatens him anymore. One of the aristocrats orders him not to be arrogant and says that he needs to attack this scoundrel with magic. However, a familiar voice asks whether someone is really trying to give him orders. Louis turns around to find that the archer who was standing in the tree suddenly falls to the ground. Kane sits down on a tree and says that he is very sorry, because he will no longer be able to use magic. The aristocrats look at him and wonder what this all means, since their people were supposed to be holding him back. Cain talks about how his family is being underestimated because he forces these people to tell him their plan. One of the aristocrats orders them to go to hell and says that he will definitely destroy them both in the future. However, a few moments later, a powerful crossbow flies straight into his head, causing him to lose consciousness. Cain says it was a very noisy performance, and Louis notes that his comrade was not injured after all. Cain adds that these are just lower creatures who are just mastering magic, and hands him the trophy. He also says that if this happens again, it will become a problem, and Louis says that he will deal with it himself. Faye claps her metal gauntlets and says that this is why she recognized him. After this, she takes a few steps towards him and invites him to fight her. Cain says that this is Faye Durahan, emphasizing that she is the daughter of the Great Master. Louis asks him if he fought her, and Cain states that the muscle girl is not his friend. He also adds that he fights her one day and then lets his guard down a little, and Louis notes that he loses. Faye advises him to stop talking idle and asks whether he will fight or be scared. Cain states that it is best to ignore her, and Faye suggests that he is a coward who is afraid of challenges. Louis, smiling, says that he still wants to see how representatives of the great families fight. Faye smiles and says that it is much better this way, and promises not to use magic so that everything will be fair. Afterwards, she rushes forward, using the Holy Spear Strike skill to quickly close the distance. However, she still has no idea how great Louis's analytical skills and combat intelligence are. A few moments later, she delivers a powerful jab that looks like it penetrates him. However, Faye, smiling, says that her opponent turns out to be quite good and knows his business well. Louis manages to get back after this blow and covers her with his hand and the shaft of the spear in time to prevent her from moving. Faye, however, adjusts her grip on the shaft, considering knocking him down. After this, she begins to spin her spear from side to side in order to inflict wounds on Louis, but he manages to dodge. After this, she makes a wide strike and says that it is time to continue their fight. After making sure he dodged it, she jumps up to swing hard and deliver a powerful blow. She uses another variation of the Holy Spear skill to cause a small earthquake. Meanwhile, the director's assistants continue to monitor all of this to prevent violations. One of them says that he hasn't seen the Dorhan family's spear technique in a long time, noting her skills. They also say that they are very impressed with Louis and believe that he will be able to hold his own against him. After this, they turn to the director and ask him who will win this fight. Principal Smith says that this boy is quite good, but he is unlikely to be able to beat Faye. Director Smith adds that battle is a clash of body and will, but in this world there are some nuances. Louis, meanwhile, continues to hold his sword, seeing a powerful smokescreen blocking his view. Faye rushes forward furiously, using another variation of the skill in hopes of piercing him or inflicting a wound. Louis continues to move incredibly fast, dodging all of these punches with incredible ease. This gradually begins to get on the girl's nerves, and she realizes that, apparently, it is not working well enough. Louis suddenly finds himself at the perfect moment to strike as she opens up. Looking at her hand, he understands that he needs to hit exactly there so that she drops her weapon. Faye, meanwhile, quickly releases the spear from her hands and grabs it again, managing to dodge this blow. However, this makes her a little nervous as she almost loses her fingers. After that, she makes a sharp blow, but Louis already manages to rise into the air with a sharp jump. He flips around a few times to make himself look more impressive and lands softly on his feet behind her. Faye says that she can't believe that he was able to dodge all the attacks, because even the young master is not capable of such a thing. Louis smiles and says that it's actually not that difficult if you look closely. After this, she says that she has a few more techniques that she would like to show. Having prepared herself properly, she suddenly takes off in an attempt to deceive her opponent's expectations. After this, she performs several flips in order to perform the sacred crescent moon spearfall technique. Louis knows this technique inside and out, noting that it includes a wide variety of different strikes. He also notes that when combined with the spear's long range, this technique becomes a formidable problem. He also understands that this technique has several fatal flaws that cannot be corrected. From his point of view, this technique is not so ideal in case the enemy manages to break through into close combat. Louis realizes that he has a good chance to break through. From his point of view, if you dodge absolutely all the attacks, you can quickly get closer and deliver a powerful blow. After this, he decides to use his swordsmanship to perform a special dance. Faye smiles and says that she understands perfectly well what Louis's true intentions are. After this, she thwarts his attack and says that such attempts are unlikely to be successful with her. After this, she falls to the ground in order to quickly land on her feet and turn around. She begins to spin like a top, dealing multiple blows over a very wide area. Lewis looks at this in surprise and wonders what it all means and how to fight such technology at all. Faye says that her family's sacred spear has no flaws and that they have taken all the fatal problems into account. Lewis looks at this carefully and realizes that a real tornado is appearing in front of him, bringing death. The assistant director, meanwhile, says that she has a truly outstanding talent. Lewis is trying to figure out what he needs to do to protect himself and stay alive after this attack. He uses the sword grid skill to set up a powerful defense system that can hold it back. He also understands that another drawback of spear-wielding technique is the high consumption of stamina. He assumes that if he continues to defend himself, sooner or later a gap will appear in her defense. After a few moments, he realizes that Faye is starting to run out of steam, which means this is the perfect moment. His eyes begin to glow again as he calculates all the possible outcomes of this fight. He rushes forward at the same second, without waiting for the phantom blows to completely dissipate. This proves to be a grave mistake, as one of these blows breaks his sword. Lewis and Faye watch intently as the sword shard falls to the ground, completely rendering him unable to fight. Smiling, she says it's impressive and understands that he plans to counterattack if the sword hadn't broken. Lewis says that apparently his luck is not on his side today, otherwise he would have won. Faye asks him if he holds back, and Lewis states that he is used to observing first and then giving it his all. After this, he seriously declares that he will also fight seriously, starting from this moment. Faye asks him if he is sure about this, emphasizing that his weapon has been destroyed. Louis shows her his fists and says that it is not a big problem for him. He proudly and menacingly declares that he is in fact much more skilled with his fists than with a sword. Faye watches his stance closely and finds that there are absolutely no flaws in it. Louis stands almost motionless and doesn't even notice how the leaves slowly fall next to him. Faye waits carefully for the right moment, and then realizes that the time has come to strike. She puts a lot of spiritual strength into her legs to give herself momentum. After this, she rushes forward like a hurricane and begins to spin her weapon. Lewis, despite this, calmly waits for her to approach, realizing that he has everything under complete control. Kane says that this spinning attack technique is dangerous and that if he encounters it, he could be seriously injured. However, in this world, there is nothing that could frighten our hero, because he knows all the outcomes in advance. Thanks to his absolute and exceptional combat training, he manages to redirect the energy of the blow. This gives him a powerful opportunity to launch a devastating counterattack. After this, he prepares to break through his opponent's defense and put her on the ground. Kane and Faye watch what is happening and note that it seems impossible because they have never seen anything like this before. Lewis cancels his attacks at the last moment, manages to intercept his opponent's spear in time and stop her. The director's assistants say that this attack should have the effect of penetrating the defense. Faye says that this is not all, specifically hinting to him about her next intention. She then performs a powerful kick to knock her spear out of his hands. After this, she adds that if a targeted breakthrough is not possible, then it is necessary to act using other tactics. After this, she jumps to the side in order to suddenly surprise him with an unexpected attack. Lewis watches her closely to understand from what distance and from what direction she will strike. Faye creates several illusionary copies of herself and begins to circle around him at great speed. After some time, all of her illusory copies and she herself simultaneously attack him. Lewis, despite this, watches her approach calmly, not at all worried about the fact that he might get hurt. After that, he grins sharply and realizes that such an attack still won't be able to even scratch his magnificent body. He gets into a special stance, starts waving his arms in different directions, and wonders what's so special about it. Thanks to this, he manages to time the moment when a real spear approaches him. In this way, he redirects the blows that are directed at him from different directions. Faye looks at this in surprise and wonders how this is even possible, because this technique seems out of this world. Director Smith is also surprised that he manages to stop the spear's rotation with his special technique. He notes that he has never seen anything like this, adding that this man surprises him very much. Lewis, meanwhile, puts on a serious face again in order to deliver a powerful counterattack with his palms. Thanks to his internal energy, he's able to move a knight in heavy armor. Faye, despite the damage she received, still manages to stabilize herself and slow her fall. However, after this, she becomes enraged and realizes that she usually never fights such an opponent. After that, she asks him what this strange technique is and where he was able to learn it. Lewis says it's a type of martial arts parry and starts telling her boring theory. Faye looks at him and asks him what he even means by that. Lewis goes on the attack and says that you just need to think of it as a special hand-to-hand combat technique. Faye is very surprised to realize that her opponent is becoming much more assertive and aggressive. She thrusts her spear forward in order to at least somehow stop him, but Louis still runs towards her. His movements become very unpredictable, and he constantly changes the direction from which he attacks. Faye tries hard to hit him with her spear, but she can't even scratch him. At one point, she tries to trick him by turning sharply and striking him with the other part of the spear. Lewis, of course, reads all these maneuvers in advance and easily dodges, jumping to the side. Kane wonders if it is an optical illusion, watching his movements closely. He understands that these movements resemble the flight of a butterfly, which moves at supersonic speed. Faye thinks that the enemy is right in front of her, but for some reason she can't hit him. Lewis uses the elegant step created by the legendary boxer who moves like a butterfly. It is noted that it is unlikely that this boxer could dodge a spear, but with Lewis's incredible talent, anything is possible. He assumes that such a tactic is ideal for this situation and rushes into the attack. After this, he concentrates hard to deliver a powerful blow and destroy the spear. Faye can't believe that some boy could break a metal weapon with just a punch. Kane watches this in amazement and realizes that this is simply incredible, because no one can fight Faye like that. Even director Smith says that this is very unexpected and that he could not have imagined something like this even in his wildest fantasies. His assistants say that their battle is taking place without magic, but still, few can defeat Faye. They speculate that perhaps this boy is a true genius among geniuses in hand-to-hand combat. Faye, meanwhile, refuses to give up and says that they are not finished yet, as she can still fight. Lewis looks at her and can't believe that this blow isn't enough to knock her out. Faye menacingly says that members of a great family cannot be so easily defeated in battle. Lewis wonders if her art is based solely on spear technique. Faye suddenly rushes forward and says that now she will show him her true power. Lewis realizes that it is too early to relax and prepares to take this attack and counterattack. Each of them tries to turn the situation around and use the best techniques in their arsenal. Faye uses the first crushing strike skill, trying to knock him down. Lewis doesn't have time to react to this and feels that his hand has been seriously damaged. He realizes that this interaction is very similar to the one-inch punch, which he knows a lot about. Jumping aside, he remarks that it is an excellent technique, and Faye states that her family is famous for more than just spears. After this, she charges forward using the tracking crushing strike skill, delivering powerful lunges. Lewis uses the martial art of boxing and says that he would be happy to fight her again. After this, they stand in front of each other and shower each other with blows, trying to hit each other in vulnerable moments. Lewis begins to smile and creates a powerful, intimidating aura, realizing that he is in the right place. His heart begins to beat faster, and the excitement that flares up in his body becomes more and more intense. An unknown entity appears behind him, and it is noted that he should enjoy this even more. Faye looks at her opponent in surprise and wonders what it is. A very scary face, capable of frightening absolutely anyone in this world, appears before her. Faye feels her heart gripped by sheer terror, and her body simply doesn't move. She tries to block the blow to avoid taking too much damage. However, Lewis hits her so hard that he sends her flying again. Principal Smith can't believe what just happened, because it absolutely doesn't fit into the logic of this world. They don't yet understand how strong their main character is, because he can ignore the rules of this world as he pleases. Lewis has trained too much and knows too much about martial arts to lose in fights like this. The other nobles watch closely as such a brilliant warrior as Faye is defeated and cannot believe their eyes. Stein notes that somehow the pathetic commoner was able to corner her. One of his henchmen also feels that this look makes him very uncomfortable. Suddenly he starts to feel sick, and Stein asks him what is happening to him and why he feels sick. The young man tries to come up with an excuse but cannot find the right words. Looking at the 13-year-old boy, he understands that this is a feeling of true horror. Stein, who for some reason is trying to intimidate him, says that giving up is not an option. His comrade says that if the legend everyone is talking about is true, then we need to act immediately. He also adds that this man cannot be left alive while Lewis tries to finish off Faye. Faye tries to get to her feet, but realizes that she will no longer be able to defend herself from the next blow. Lewis completely ignores the fact that she has lost her powers and continues to hit her with all his might. Faye makes several more attempts to stabilize herself in the air, but she fails. Lewis jumps up to deliver another powerful attack and continues his relentless onslaught. His determination causes genuine terror in any enemy who dares to cross his path. Once over his opponent, he completely loses control of himself and begins to shower her with blows. Faye reflects that the strength and speed of this great genius are on a completely different level. Anticipating another powerful blow, she realizes that the duel has clearly gone beyond what she originally expected. She realizes with horror that if she doesn't do anything, she will simply be killed by these powerful blows. To prevent this, she decides to resort to magic and use a fire counterattack. At the last moment, she clashes with his fists again, hoping that this will stop such a wild opponent. The collision of two powerful energies causes a powerful explosion that resounds throughout the area. Faye is seriously damaged and sent flying at high speed due to the shockwave. She also smashes her body through several thick trees, unable to stop. Lewis, meanwhile, is gradually recovering from his period of possession by a martial arts demon. He is surprised by what just happened, noting that he has lost control of himself. Looking at his hand, he realizes that powerful nature magic has just been used against him. Kane asks him if he's okay, to which he replies that he's more concerned about Faye's fate. Stein immediately pops out of nowhere and declares that Lewis has lost his token and therefore should be disqualified. This fact gives him incredible joy since he is finally rid of his hated enemy. Lewis looks at his clothes in surprise and realizes that his token is gradually burning in the fire. He doesn't manage to put it out in time, which is why the token is truly lost forever. Stein states that he is eliminated and must leave the arena, while Kane claims that it was an accident. Stein says that the director saw everything, expressing hope that Lewis does not intend to cheat. After this, he puts his hand on his shoulder and notes that Lewis should disappear so as not to interfere with the exam. Faye orders everyone to stop, then slowly gets to her feet and walks towards Louis. Stein and Kane turn around in surprise when they hear this menacing voice, realizing that they shouldn't contradict her. Lewis looks at her with incredible surprise, unable to believe that she survived his blows. Faye was slightly injured, but Lewis wasn't strong enough to kill people that easily. Stein asks her if she wants to punish him for breaking the rules after protecting Louis. Faye immediately orders him to shut up and adds that she knows his token is burned. After that, she apologizes and says that she accidentally used magic, and Lewis also apologizes. She adds that everything is fine since he forced her to use magic, so the victory will be his. She offers to fight after enrolling, but Stein states that he only has 4 tokens and won't be able to enroll. Faye takes out a special handkerchief in which she has kept all her trophies all this time. Afterwards, she hands him the award for winning, noting that he fully deserved it. Lewis looks at the handkerchief and realizes that he now has 14 tokens that will definitely help him. Faye, smiling, notes that this should count as a record, and Stein begins to get angry. After this, she hits Kane's shoulder with all her might to get his attention. She also says that the weak come only when those who were previously worthy fail. With these words, she returns to him the spear fragment, which can still be used for fighting. She adds that only 10 people will be able to pass, so they need to make up for lost tokens. Kane notes that this is an incredible coincidence, since he was thinking exactly the same thing. He also says that it turns out Faye can think about something other than fighting, and she calls him rude names. Gradually, the assistant director, who had been closely watching everything that was happening, slowly descended next to Louis. He says that Lewis has lost his token, so further participation in this stage is impossible. He also states that he will take him to a safe place, hinting that this does not mean Lewis failed the test. Stein's friend says that if Faye beats the other contenders, Lewis will definitely move on. However, Stein, maddened by his anger, notes that if the contenders accidentally die, then no one will be surprised. It is completely unclear why this idea came to his mind, but they decide that this is indeed how it will be. Meanwhile, the aristocrats watching Lewis discover that he contains the demonic personality of a tough hero. Lewis reflects that his art is very powerful, but it cannot compare to magic. So he decides that he needs to learn to combine magic with martial arts to become the strongest. Night falls and he decides to get to his home alone, after taking a walk around the academy. He looks at his clothes and notes that they are torn to shreds. Now he will have to explain this to his mother. He wonders what will happen if he tells the truth, because his mother will question him until tomorrow morning. All of a sudden, a man in a black hood who passed by him decides to attack him. Lewis reacts instantly and knocks the knife out of his attacker's hand with a powerful kick. Immediately after this, he strikes again, to which the killer does not have time to react. He just asks in surprise how Lewis was able to notice such a quick attack and interrupt it. Lewis explains with pathos that the smell of blood cannot be hidden, and that he can smell it from several kilometers away. The killer runs closer and notes that Lewis is too relaxed to be someone who is about to die. Lewis immediately understands that these are experienced opponents, so he will have to give it his all. What worries him most is the strongest of them, who decided to watch from the side. Other opponents take out knives that look very much like chopped-off swords to increase stealth. They warn him not to get distracted or he will lose his head, and then they lunge towards him. Lewis goes back into combat master mode to calculate all the blows of his opponents. He skillfully dodges numerous attacks without the slightest sign of fatigue. At a certain moment, he finds a suitable window of opportunity to intercept the blow. Grabbing the adult killer, he abruptly throws him over himself and slams him hard into the ground. However, this killer immediately jumps to his feet and tries to kick him, albeit unsuccessfully. Immediately after this, Lewis does a few somersaults to get out of the way. The killer notes that advanced combat techniques confirm their information about the enemy's unreal speed and strength. Lewis asks in surprise what this information is and who provided it. The assassin acknowledges his skill in hand-to-hand combat, but wonders what he can do against him in magic. Immediately after this, several assassins take aim with crossbows and fire magical arrows. Lewis looks at them in surprise, trying to figure out what to do when such fighters are going against him. Experienced killers accidentally miss, so Lewis doesn't get a single scratch after the volley. He realizes that he has a special breathing technique to combat these arrows. To do this, he uses internal chi energy to increase his physical strength. He releases hidden abilities, increasing his strength and speed many times over. The killers continue to fire their crossbows, noting that resistance is futile. However, just like when Lewis stood still, they still can't hit him. The shooters are surprised that their opponent is too fast and dodges the shots. Lewis makes it to the killers with impressive ease to intercept their weapons. He also tries to kick the leader, who cowardly covers himself with his hands. However, the blows of the great martial artist are so powerful that they throw him aside. After this, Lewis decides to jump back to give the archers a chance to shoot at him. The squad's Karatan furiously orders him to be stopped before it is too late. Lewis turns around sharply, seeing another enemy suddenly materialize behind him. The opponent delivers a powerful kick to him, and although Lewis manages to block it, he takes damage. A sharp pain runs through his entire arm, and he realizes that if he were to go a little further, he would have suffered a serious fracture. The enemy gives him time to jump to the side and catch his breath before the next attack. Lewis feels that the jokes are over now and that they are really trying to destroy him for real. Now, looking at his opponent, he admits that he is truly strong, and it will not be easy to deal with him. At that very moment, he is surrounded by other killers who try to shoot him with crossbows. Lewis immediately finds himself in a very awkward position. Now he also has to dodge them. However, it is almost impossible to recover from all the shots at once, and he receives several wounds. A moment later he falls, but remains on his feet, and the killers assume he is dead. Suddenly they decide to come closer to him, saying that he has finally fallen and that they are tired of shooting. One of them comes as close as possible to asking why a commoner is causing so many problems. Lewis wisely decides to take advantage of the fact that the archer has come close to him and quickly jumps up. Before his opponent can fire, he snatches his weapon and pulls it aside. Immediately after this, Lewis gives him a very elegant blow with his fingers right on the ears. The blow proves incredibly deadly, breaking the unholy killer's cervical vertebrae. Lewis wastes no time and immediately decides to take advantage of the moment to fire a shot from a single-shot crossbow. Thanks to a mysterious power, he manages to split one shot into three at once and instantly destroy the rest. The leader of the killers looks at him in surprise and wonders why he is pretending to be dead. Lewis slowly rises on the bodies of the slain assassins and prepares to continue the battle. The leader claps his hands, noting Lewis's skill and saying that it is very impressive for such a young candidate. Lewis takes aim at him and asks if he really doesn't care about the fate of his comrades. The killer declares that their fate is already sealed, after which Louis naively decides to shoot him with a crossbow. None of the attempts to use this weapon are successful because the killer is too fast. The killer praises the protagonist, saying that if it weren't for that man's order, everything could have gone differently. He adds that he would like to make him his student, but unfortunately they ended up on different sides. Lewis tries to block the attack, again relying on his impressive skills, but now everything goes wrong. The blow proves too powerful to withstand, and Lewis is thrown 50 meters away. Lewis still can't believe that his well-honed technique and ability to predict the outcome of a fight helped him survive. However, before he can get his bearings, the killer appears in front of him again. He adds that his ability may surpass the level of a student, but it is still not enough. He notes that he has not stood next to a fighter of a higher rank, so he does not have a chance. Immediately after this, the killer strikes again with his hammer and knocks him into the ground. This time, the killer decides not to give him the chance to get up and attacks again at the same second. Using strange demonic magic, he attacks multiple times with his tentacles. After this, he decides to make sure that the enemy is dead and wait for the smoke to clear. His gaze carefully drills into the protagonist, and he quickly discovers something surprising. The killers wonder if this boy can still stand after what happened. Lewis feels his bones crack a little and declares that he will never die here. The killers note that it is too late, and unfortunately for them, Lewis's life goes on. After this, he declares that even God cannot help him now, and takes a short pause to charge his ability. Lewis watches this magic in amazement, trying to understand what these techniques are and how to reflect them. The assassin, meanwhile, shouts out the name of his secret martial art, Heavenly Hammer. Lewis, gritting his teeth, thinks about the fact that he cannot die here because he has not yet mastered the magic of protection. Relatives flash before his eyes, and this becomes real fuel for his incredible strength. His eyes begin to glow with uncontrollable rage again, and he thinks that he wants to change his destiny. He understands that no matter what price he has to pay, he will definitely survive. He then thrusts forward a magical fist that collides with the Heavenly Hammer. The killer watches in amazement, not believing his eyes, and wonders if this is really happening. When these two magics collide, a powerful shockwave and fireballs are created. The explosion resounds throughout the area, frightening everyone nearby and indicating the seriousness of the battle. However, the attempt to defend himself cost Lewis a lot of energy, and now he needs to rest. The assassin summons his hammer again, thinking that the battle is going strangely, and he hasn't experienced anything like this in a long time. As he approaches Louis, he remarks that he feels as if he is fighting with himself. Seemingly smiling behind his mask, he says he now understands why they are targeting him. Taking a few steps towards Louis, he swings the hammer again and orders him to die. However, at the last moment, the familiar voice of the director is heard, declaring that this is enough. A powerful energy tornado passes by the protagonist and the killer, causing the latter to jump back. However, it turns out that there are many more of these energy storms than one, and the killer is trapped. The killer watches the approaching tornado in horror and wonders what it all means. Each such tornado turns out to be a whole hail of blows that can cut a person into several pieces. Unable to cope with such incredible speed, this killer takes a huge amount of damage. Lewis jumps back to avoid the area damage and tries to figure out what's going on. Principal Smith slowly descends to come to the aid of his student. Lewis looks at the director in surprise and asks what he's doing here at such a late hour. Principal Smith notes that he was able to suppress his rage and offers Lewis a potion to recover. Immediately after this, he turns his gaze to the killer, who is still alive after this blow. However, despite the fact that he remained alive, it is unlikely that he will be able to continue fighting in the future. Principal Smith accuses him of attacking an academy applicant and asks if it was an order. The assassin says that the Great Master should not be underestimated and that he will not be able to protect this monster. Principal Smith quickly glances at his student, then looks back at his opponent. The killer suddenly starts bleeding and finally declares that this is only the beginning of the problems. Before Principal Smith can ask what it all means, the killer explodes and rips blood. Director Smith notes that it appears to be a murder case, and they are the only ones using such skills. Lewis, meanwhile, wonders if it was the high-level healing potion that got him back on his feet. Looking at his hands, he notes that it feels as if the broken bones have healed. After this, he rightly remarks that it was unlikely that the director was passing by here at such a late hour by chance. He asks him carefully how it is that he constantly saves him. Director Smith says it's best to discuss this matter at his home instead of here for privacy. Lewis remembers that it is already late and his mother is probably very worried about him. After this, he suddenly turns around and runs away, noting that this is a real nightmare. Director Smith calls upon her shadow assistant to restore order. After this, a strange entity, similar to a giant snake, flies into the air to get rid of the corpses. Meanwhile, we are transported to the northern city, where Lewis's mother is again attacked by aristocrats. Of course, these are the same aristocrats who dropped out of the qualifying round and now decided to attack her. They ask her what she's doing here and add that apparently she needs to be punished for lying. Lewis comes to his mother's aid at the very last moment and delivers a powerful blow to the aristocrat's face. The blow is so powerful that one of the aristocrats flies into the other and falls to the ground. Lewis's mother looks at her son happily and notes that he has finally arrived, emphasizing that she had been worried. After a few moments, she looks at him more closely, and an expression of horror appears on her face. Lewis asks her with genuine concern if everything is okay and how she feels. However, instead of answering, she herself asks what happened and why his clothes were torn. Lewis explains that everything is fine and he just got his clothes caught on a tree during the exam. One of the aristocrats points at him and says that he constantly breaks the rules. They threaten him that they will complain to the nearest lord that some commoner is attacking. Principal Smith appears out of nowhere again and reports that there appears to have been a misunderstanding. He adds that he is the director of the Academy of Organisms and gives his name. The aristocrats look at him with fear and realize that he is a great master with great power. Director Smith says he would like to convey his best wishes to the Lord. The aristocrats bow before him in fear and promise to carry out all the orders of the great master. Afterwards, he apologizes for the suddenness and says that he would like to discuss something with Lewis's mother. Lewis's mother immediately invites him into her home, telling him that he can sit down and make himself at home. Principal Smith takes a close look at the house, which does not use magic, and tries to understand how this is possible. He notes that if you look closely, there are no traces of magical work here at all. Looking at the device at home, he understands that it is made very well and carefully. He also discovers strange devices that Lewis was able to create when he was only a 13-year-old boy. His mother says she doesn't know how he came up with it, but he made life easier. She also asks what he was doing during the exam if the director came here. Principal Smith says he is such a talented boy that he is even mentioned in the sacred scriptures of Gaia. He adds that when humanity was under the tyranny of monsters, a genius appeared. According to the prophecy, he, guided by the goddess, mastered the elements and created battle magic, defeating all enemies. He notes that this was a memorable day from which the dedicated calendar began to be counted. He also adds that in the Holy Scriptures, this man is recorded as the first hero in the world. Louis's mother says that this is a real savior, and Lewis notes that there is no hero in the legends. Director Smith adds that the characters actually appear in a different form and look quite frightening. He clarifies that in the legends, the hero is a man with black hair and the same eyes. He adds that these are great secrets known only to the top of humanity. And he adds that the hero certainly saved people, but in his heart there lived madness, ordering him to kill everyone. After this man committed an unforgivable and grave sin and destroyed all his friends. It was because of this that he disappeared from the pages of history, and his inner rage became his curse. Lewis listens attentively to this story and wonders if he too is afflicted with this disease. He adds that this is precisely why, when a person with black hair and eyes is found, he must be destroyed. Principal Smith puts his hand on his head and asks him if he really thought he could fool everyone. Mother starts crying, explaining that she told him to dye his hair so that he wouldn't be seen. Lewis places his hand on his mother's palm and says that everything will be fine and there is nothing to worry about now. He adds that if the director wanted to kill her, he would have done it already, which means he has a desire to talk. Principal Smith notes that Lewis is surprisingly wise for a 13-year-old boy to have been able to resist. He also says that he saw him as a new hero, which greatly surprises Lewis. Principal Smith lifts the apple into the air and notes that this world only seems serene. He sadly explains that there is a great darkness going on inside, and he thought about it while watching Lewis today. He suggests that the legend is in fact just a guess or even an absurdity. After this, he states that he would like to guide him on the right path for the sake of the future of humanity. The director then suddenly throws an apple towards Lewis to further test his reaction. Lewis has no problem putting his hand out to catch the apple. Principal Smith states that thanks to Faye and Kane's efforts, most of the applicants failed the final test. After this, he asks Lewis if he would like to become his personal disciple. Louis wonders why he decided to bet on him without fear that he might turn into a heartless student. Director Smith looks at him carefully, then makes a sharp and quick movement invisible to the eye. The apple in Lewis's hands instantly breaks into several pieces, which greatly surprises him. Director Smith adds that when that happens, he will kill him very quickly before disaster occurs. After some time, his comrades ask him if the director personally invited him to the academy. Lewis, despite this, keeps thinking about the conversation he had with the director yesterday. He wonders what exactly connects him to the legendary hero who killed his own people. He again remembers Principal Smith's words about how he won't be able to fool everyone by dyeing his hair. He also clearly remembers the words that the director will kill him, and wonders how much he can be trusted. Lewis asks why he said that in front of his mother, and Principal Smith explains that he can't keep her in the dark. Principal Smith points out that if this continues, his mother will be a burden, and Lewis is quick to point out that this is not the case. Principal Smith states that when Lewis's true identity is revealed, his family will be in danger. After this, he advises him to become much stronger, since the real tests are just beginning. Lewis reflects that the director is definitely right and he really needs to become much stronger. After a while, little children who consider him their brother run to meet him. Lewis immediately picks one of them up to give them a proper welcome. The girl asks if he will come sometimes, adding that she does not want to say goodbye to him. Louis promises her that he will return during the long holidays, because this place is his home. After this, he gives her a promise that he will definitely keep it no matter what. After some time, one of his acquaintances reports that some nobleman's butler is looking for him. Lewis comes out of the gate and an aristocrat approaches him, asking if he is Louis. He adds that he is the butler of the Aranka family, emphasizing that Mr. Kane invites him to his place. Lewis reads the letter carefully and assumes that this boy wants to strengthen their friendship before classes start. Lewis nods slowly, then says that he understands everything, and the butler asks him to get into the carriage. After some time, we move to the city where Kane lives with his family. The butler reports that the Aranka family is very distinguished, and this city prospers thanks to them. Lewis looks at the giant mansion in surprise and notes that it is truly a status symbol. Kane almost immediately runs out into the street to meet his dear guest and see him off. Smiling, he says that they will now study together, and Lewis notes his success on the exam. Lewis adds that he only got through thanks to them, so he will turn a blind eye to the mistakes he made when he won. Kane states that they weren't able to fight during the exam, so they'll need to fix that before classes start. Afterwards, he asks Lewis if he wants to learn about the academy and magic beforehand so he can have an advantage. Suddenly, a stern female voice is heard, asking what all the commotion is about. The stately woman looks closely at Lewis and asks Kane who this man is. Kane introduces Louis to his mother, saying that he is one of his best friends. However, before he can say anything, the angry mother suddenly orders him to shut up. Kane looks at her in surprise, trying to understand why she suddenly became so stern and angry. She says it is unacceptable for strangers to pass through the estate gates. She states that such a person is not worthy of being his friend and is not worth wasting time with. She adds that he needs to train as his father said and strive to become a great sage. After this, she approaches Louis and asks why he became close to her son, assuming that he wants money or power. After this, she takes the ring off her hand and says that it is worth tens of gold coins. At that very moment, she throws the ring in front of him, explaining that he will be able to live on this money for the rest of his days. After this, she hints to Lewis that he should take the ring and get out of here, never to appear again. Kane asks her why she is doing this, hinting that their friendship has nothing to do with financial interest. After this, he immediately apologizes to his friend, saying that he didn't think that everything would turn out exactly like this. Lewis explains that he became friends with Kane because he recognized his abilities. After that, he asks her if she really thinks that her son's world is worth so little. Kane is surprised that his friend is so smart and uses a sharp tongue to contradict his mother. The woman becomes even more angry and turns to her servants, ordering them to act immediately. She orders that this peasant be thrown out of here, after which the guards come closer to him. Kane orders them to stop and says that Lewis has broken the previous records on the exam and defeated Faye. His mother points out that this is simply impossible and that such an absurd lie is unlikely to work. Louis states that this is not a lie, adding that if he is around, Kane can become even stronger. Kane's mother asks how a pathetic peasant can act so arrogantly. However, after a few moments, the doors suddenly open and the house becomes very cold. After this, a lone silhouette appears in the gate, slowly approaching them. The man turns out to be Kane's father, who slowly repeats the words Lewis just said. He asks Lewis if he really said those words, hinting that he had been eavesdropping at the door the whole time. Kane's father slowly approaches, and everyone else falls silent, unable to withstand his pressure. Even Kane's mother pronounces her husband's name in fear, after which she throws herself into his arms. She tells him that if things are left as is, Kane will never be able to match his level of strength. However, the proud aristocrat decides that talking to his wife is beneath his dignity and passes by. After this, he approaches his son, and Lewis understands that it is better to bow before this man. He says he is very pleased to meet Louis, adding that he is a friend of Kane. William asks Kane if the boy is really telling the truth, and Kane confirms it. After this, he looks at the boy threateningly, declaring that such things need to be proven. Lewis only now realizes how magnificent the man standing in front of him is and how cruel his aura is. Lewis tries to understand this incredible thirst for murder, the likes of which he has never seen before. This killing lust takes the form of a giant tiger that tries to attack Lewis mentally. Lewis feels terrified that he cannot breathe because of the suffocating presence. He understands that this man is truly extremely serious. Looking into his eyes, he understands that if he does nothing, he will be able to kill him with his gaze. The tension in Lewis's body reaches an incredible level after he simply looks into William's eyes. William concentrates his gaze to increase the pressure on Lewis's body. At a certain point, it feels like whole pieces of his body are being torn off. Lewis realizes that in front of him is a man with terrifying power, as if his soul had simply been ripped out. He realizes that this is to be expected from a great master, but he is not about to give up either. He reflects that he has pumped up his resistance to the pressure of the killing intent, and this level does not pose a threat to him. Lewis suddenly remembers how strong he really is and creates a ring of fire around himself. It also continues to get stronger, even though nothing happens to other people. However, William can clearly see how strong this boy's aura is, since he was able to handle the pressure. A giant dragon appears behind Louis, looking very menacing and majestic. Lewis decides to show William his eyes, which shimmer with fire and incredible power. They stand motionless for a moment, ignoring the awkward silence. Their incredible auras clash, allowing Lewis to showcase his abilities. Kane realizes that something is clearly wrong here and wonders what is going on. Lewis falls to the ground as he lacks the stamina to withstand the pressure for long. Kane helps him up and asks what happened to him, to which he replies that everything is fine. William suddenly asks Lewis why he needs the power he so desires to gain at the academy. Lewis proudly explains that he needs this power to protect his family. William is extremely impressed by the protagonist's unusual and noble motivation. After this, he coldly tells Kane that his willpower is too weak and he should learn from Lewis. Kane's mother asks her husband in surprise what he is thinking about and why he made such a decision. However, the cold husband says that if she wants to say something, she should continue, and she falls silent. The woman looks down in fear, and Kane looks at her with sympathy, trying to understand what happened to her. After this, he invites Lewis to the training ground to continue their training. Kane also says that he regrets what happened in advance and asks for forgiveness on behalf of his parents. Lewis remarks that his father is too stern, adding that there is not much difference between them. Kane adds that his father is a meritocrat, and Lewis is much more suited to be the son of this family. Lewis explains that this is his way of showing love since he hired him as a coach. Kane looks up to the sky to admire the birds flying above them. He wonders if this is what a father's love is because he has never felt anything like it. He reflects on the fact that for as long as he can remember, he has hardly left this house and is constantly training. There is nothing in his life except grueling training and constant skill tests. His father wanted to make him into a great sage like his grandfather, and so he simply followed his commands. Kane muses that maybe he just wishes his father would finally acknowledge him. This place is like a prison to him, and he can only breathe with the guard's permission. Adults constantly praise him, but he feels that his talent and status were just chains. Kane looks up at the sky and says that the tighter he is tied, the more he yearns for the outside world. He also admits that he would like to sing his song freely like a bard, or travel the world like a bird. However, he understands that, unfortunately, in this world only strength matters, and now he is too weak. Lewis looks at him with sympathy and realizes that he, too, once lived with very cold parents. Kane says he doesn't want to be the strongest, but he simply has no other choice. He adds that swinging the sword is the only way to break these chains. He states that his father graduated from the academy, so he will go there and become even stronger to get permission. In his mind, if you are given permission to live freely, it means you have become strong, so he will follow that path. Smiling, he looks at Louis and says that he is relying on him to help him with this matter. Louis takes a fighting stance and agrees to these conditions, adding that he will be happy to help him. William closely watches his son's training in the company of his faithful butler. He asks him if there are any results from the investigation he was ordered to carry out. The butler notes that this boy is definitely unusual, as he distinguished himself during the exam. The butler adds that Lewis broke the previous record and defeated Faye, who used magic. He also notes that Lewis is highly respected by Grandmaster Smith, who protected him from assassins. William watches him and realizes that this boy, apparently, is a troublemaker. The butler asks in surprise why he allowed Lewis to contact the young gentleman. William states that troublemakers are drawn to danger, which is useful in such trials. From his point of view, once you challenge danger and overcome it, you become stronger. Looking at his son, he hopes that he can become stronger if he follows Louis. Kane says it's time to show off his incredible new technique. Lewis cheerfully encourages him, telling him to attack with all his might and show everything he can. William remarks that their son apparently has a better eye for people than he does. Kane charges forward using his wind martial arts skill to help him dash forward. Lewis instantly analyzes his opponent's techniques and prepares a counterattack in time. Kane manages to stop. If he had continued, he would have been knocked out. Lewis notes that the acceleration using magic is good, but the movement is too predictable. Kane says that now it becomes clear to him why even Faye couldn't defeat him in open combat. Lewis suddenly looks back and Kane asks if there is something on his face. Lewis takes his sword and notes that there are some big oddities in his fighting style. Kane explains that his technique is a secret martial art learned from his father and grandfather. Lewis says he would like to show him another way that might work better. Kane asks in surprise if there really is a path different from the one his father and grandfather took. Lewis slowly places the sword on the weapon rack to rest. After this, he takes out a short knife and asks Kane if he would like to surprise his father. William watches his son, trying to understand why he and Louis suddenly became quiet and started discussing something. He finds this surprising, as Kane usually never interrupted his training to talk. However, after a few moments, they suddenly rush straight at him to attack. Lewis had explained to them a few minutes ago that in martial arts, speed is an excellent weapon. He adds that speed not only focuses on the speed of movement, but also on the speed of reaction. He clarifies that the natural speed is at a very satisfactory level. Lewis emphasizes that it combines well with wind attribute magic and complex strike techniques. He also adds that just because his grandfather mastered the art doesn't mean he can master it. In his opinion, to fully develop talent, one needs to switch to a specialized fighting style. Lewis shows 2 blades and asks if he's ready for this. Cain says that there is no point in comparing him to other nobles, because he will do everything to become free. Lewis explains that the key is to not stand still and to be able to retreat when necessary. After this, he recommends showing his father how determined he is in mastering the new style. Each of them takes advantage of the additional opportunity to break the distance with William. Their speed is incredible, and they approach the Great Master faster than an arrow. The butler asks if everything is all right, but he brushes it off sharply and accepts the challenge. William twists sharply at the last moment before his son strikes. Cain lands on the ground, after which Louis steps in, hoping to surprise William. Lewis attacks William, thinking that the dagger is the fastest and most maneuverable weapon of all. He understands that he must use his advantage to its full potential in order to gain an advantage in battle. He also realizes that if he skillfully combines daggers with combat techniques, he can surpass the enemy's reaction speed. William is surprised at how fast his opponent was and is a little impressed. However, despite this, he's still too fast to be touched. Cain decides to use wind magic to make a few jumps from side to side. Lewis and Cain continue to attack the Grand Master, but without achieving the slightest success. Cain has a revelation that his body feels incredibly light and fluttering in the air. He supposes that he feels like a bird that has finally learned to fly. He realizes that the combination of daggers, martial arts, and wind magic makes him feel alive. Now he feels that he has definitely found his new fighting style, which he will need to stick to. William turns to his son in surprise, realizing that he has indeed changed tactics. He is also surprised that his son has mastered daggers so quickly and has already achieved considerable success. Cain rushes forward to scare his father and stop the blade near his face. William is unhappy that his son decided to change weapons and not listen to advice. He suddenly uses a powerful aura to knock opponents aside. He says it was naive to abandon family techniques to show what he could do. Lewis jumps back, realizing that the irritation runs deeper than it seems. Lewis advises Cain to use the boost to maintain his momentum in battle. Cain shares this boost with Lewis to help them move faster. After this, they again try to bypass the enemy and attack simultaneously using a specific trajectory. William continues to stand there with an extremely dissatisfied look, waiting for them to approach. They rain down a hail of blows on him again, but none of them reach him. At a certain point, he tries to intercept his son's attack, realizing that he has read his movement. He puts his hand forward and asks what they are capable of. Its force of impact dramatically changes the behavior of the weapon and causes it to stop. Cain jumps to the side to gain more breathing room and a window of opportunity. William falls for the predictable provocation and assumes that his son is simply running away. After this, he rushes forward, calling his son a pathetic coward who must answer for the maneuver. Lewis explains that retreat is not weakness, but an opportunity to deceive an arrogant enemy. He decides to take advantage of the advice Lewis gave him shortly before the fight. He turns sharply and rushes forward towards his father, anticipating his movement. At a certain point, he makes a sharp somersault jump to end up behind him. He uses tornado wind magic to perform a combination attack with Louis. William realizes too late that he has been deceived and turns back. Lewis and Cain approach him on their magical wings and prepare to strike. Lewis says there is a technique in martial arts called change up. To demonstrate it, he immediately strikes with the blade. Cain doesn't understand the meaning at first and assumes that they are trying to attack him. He thrusts his blade forward to block the blow, but the sound is strange. Lewis deceives his opponent with a slight movement and conveniently brings his hand out for maneuver. He explains that it is a technique that confuses the opponent with a sudden change in speed. He notes that even a normal movement becomes a feint when used correctly. He believes that William can be defeated by maximizing the dagger's power through speed. William continues to turn, barely moving, which limits his options. At a certain point, Cain moves closer to deliver another attack on his father's clothes. William is surprised and says that a slow attack makes no sense. However, at that very moment, he realizes that he miscalculated, as the blow hits him directly. Lewis suddenly increases the speed of his attack and moves to the side to get out of the capture radius. William is surprised that his son was able to hit his shoulder and tear a small piece of fur on his robe. Lewis and Cain exchange joyful glances, realizing that this is the first success in the battle with him. After this, they decide to consolidate their dominance and attack William again. Suddenly, he orders them to stop as he has seen enough. Lewis and Kane follow the command and look on in surprise, trying to understand what made him react like that. William turns to his son, looking at him for a long time with cold eyes. Kane tries to understand what his father meant while catching his breath after the fight. William says he hopes his son doesn't bring shame on the family name during his studies. Kane puts his fist to his chest and promises to glorify his father. The butler continues to follow the gentleman and asks if everything is all right with him. William reflects on the fact that he has never seen a series of consecutive dagger strikes at close range before. He notes that this was an incredibly interesting retreat technique that he had not seen before. William admits he never thought he would learn new tricks from his children. Lewis says it was a great opportunity to fight the great master, but now it's over. Kane happily reports that his father has acknowledged him for the first time, and it is the best feeling of his entire life. After a while, they run into the family library, and Lewis declares that he least expected such a turn of events. Looking around, he says that he has never seen so many valuable books. Kane explains that this is the least gratitude he can afford for the knowledge he has received. Lewis turns around and sees his friend dragging a whole box of various valuables in front of him. He asks why give him something so expensive when it is much more valuable to them. Kane says that not only the books of the Academy are here, but also textbooks on magic that the peasants rarely see. Lewis realizes that getting to know these textbooks ahead of time will give him a real advantage. Kane also talks about the magical awakening ritual that takes place during admission. He adds that it is a ritual during which the elements are felt through the statue of the goddess in the temple. Kane states that the procedure costs 10 gold coins, adding that it is free for all Academy students. He explains that living expenses and textbook rentals add up to a considerable amount. He promises to help Lewis with money and other valuables if he gets into trouble. Lewis realizes he'll need some money and decides to take up potion making. After some time, he comes up with the idea of using knowledge from his past life to make money. After that, he asks if the Aranka family is connected to the merchant guilds. Kane asks why he needs this information, and Lewis replies that it is a secret that he himself will soon find out. After some time, the entrance ceremony to the Arcanist Academy begins, where new students arrive. Lewis gets his signature uniform and is delighted that the day has finally arrived, and he has earned his place. Suddenly, a girl passes by him and is surprised by the interesting smell. She notices him and notes that, judging by his perfume, this guy is at least from a count's family. She introduces herself as Rose, congratulates him on his admission, and offers to give him a tour. Louis states that he would be very grateful, after which he gives his full name. Rose mentally notes that she has never heard of him before, then kindly tells him to follow her. She adds that he may already know this, but the Emperor has aged greatly over the past couple of years. She also reports that his heirs at the Academy fought against nobles and great families. She notes that from the outside, the Academy appears peaceful, but behind the scenes there is a fierce struggle. Regular students are free to move around and attend classes, but expulsions are quite common. After this, she gently lifts his chin with her finger to get his attention. She adds that he is being closely watched, so he needs to try his best. She also asks who his family supports in the aristocratic infighting. Suddenly, a high school student appears in front of her and says that Lewis just broke the record. This young man turns out to be Stein's assistant named Brian, whom Lewis has not yet seen. The girl is very surprised that Lewis simply broke the record and notes that she smelled his perfume. After this, she leaves in annoyance, saying that she wasted her time. Lewis doesn't understand what that was, but then says that he's also pleased to meet Brian. He advises not to pay attention to the girl since she has always been a bit stupid. He adds that the Academy is a smaller version of the Empire, and there are plenty of people like her here. Kane reappears and cheerfully addresses Lewis by name. Afterwards, Brian leaves to greet the other freshmen. Lewis looks after him in surprise, trying to understand what had alarmed him so much that he decided to leave. Brian looks around carefully and shows his true attitude towards Lewis. Kane asks what they were talking about, and Lewis replies that they just said hello. Kane explains that this man is the Chancellor's son, and they are not very close. Faye suddenly says that he is sometimes interesting to talk to when he comes to talk. After this, she adds that she doesn't like soft guys, and Kane takes this personally. Miliana also greets them, and Faye says that if Kane becomes as strong as Louis, she will acknowledge him. Lewis thanks her for her support during the exam, to which she replies that he passed because he was strong. After this, she proudly says that next time she will definitely take revenge. A squabble ensues between Kane and Faye, and she says that only those who defeat her can speak to her. Miliana grabs her friend and says that they need to register as quickly as possible. Kane hands Lewis a bag of money, saying it is his share for the adventure he pulled off. Some time ago, they head to the Merchant Guild to implement Lewis's plan. Louis offers a new type of perfume, noting that it has a subtle aroma. Kane notes that the perfume smells nice, but there's probably not much money to be made from it. Now Kane says he never thought he would sell it for a lot of money and is surprised by Lewis's ideas. Lewis notes that it is better to keep this story a secret so as not to attract prying ears. Lewis gets his credit card and the assistant hopes he can quickly become a master. He is watched by aristocrats who discuss that this is the same Lewis who passed thanks to Faye and Kane. Lewis also learns that Stein hired an assassin's guild to eliminate him, which is why he was expelled. Lewis understands that now everything falls into place, because it was this man who benefited from his death. Kane adds that Stein was the older brother, so it's best to stay away from him. Stein's older brother looks almost exactly like Stein himself and casts a sullen glance at Louis. As he passes by, he thinks that this is only the beginning, and they will gradually drive him into despair. After a while, we are transported to the Great Hall of the Arcanist Academy, and Principal Smith decides to greet them. He notes that they have overcome many difficulties and ended up here, which is worthy of pride. He adds that their life is just beginning here and recommends that they study hard and strive to become stronger. He also says that now they will introduce the first-year students who will give a grand speech. He asks Neil to give the opening speech when a very strange man comes onto the stage. For some reason, Neil decides that in this situation it is better to take off all his clothes to attract attention. People watching him notice that this is the same peasant who took first place. The assistant director says that he is no longer dealt with, but Director Smith stops him. Neil brandishes his axe and rudely addresses the aristocrats, calling them pathetic dwarfs. They say his goal is to beat each of them so that they lose their souls from fear. They ask how this pathetic, uncouth savage dared to address them so disrespectfully. However, Neil orders them to shut up, adding that they are all weaklings who only know how to talk. The assistant director notes that the thought of having to teach this child is making his stomach ache. After this, Neil suddenly declares that his main target is one specific student. A few moments later, he throws the axe with all his might, and all the other students disperse. The axe crashes into the stone floor, creating a powerful shockwave. It is already clear who his main target is, given the exam results. Lewis looks calmly at the weapon thrown at his feet, as if it were a challenge. However, in reality, he doesn't react much because there is no point. Neil immediately jumps onto the axe to hold on and show off his grace. He looks at Louis carefully, not paying attention to how absurd he looks. After this, Neil proudly declares that they will definitely fight, but Lewis does not take him seriously. Kane stands up for his friend, saying that the ceremony is not over yet and that this is not the way to behave. Neil looks at him carefully and is surprised that this screamer came here with Louis. He also scornfully remarks that Kane probably barks a lot, but cannot bite because of fear. Kane takes this as a grave insult, thinking that these bastards are always the same. To get even as quickly as possible, he tries to rush forward and strike with his fist. Louis abruptly stops his blow, realizing that there is no point in starting a fight now. He asks him to calm down so as not to provoke unnecessary violence within the academy. Nil states that he doesn't mind fighting, after which he calls them pathetic cowards. Brian says that he and Lewis are talented commoners, so it's better to get along with them. He adds that if Neil acts selfishly, he won't last long at the academy. Neil orders him to get lost, adding that he has no interest in small fry. Brian takes a few steps back, unable to recover from the brazen insult. The aristocrats behind him are surprised that such a barbarian was allowed to enter the academy. Kane says that by intervening, he put himself in an awkward position and recommends learning from the mistakes of others. Neil claims that everything suits him and that he will crush the weakest first. Suddenly, one of the teachers puts his hand on his shoulder and reminds him that fighting between students is prohibited. He adds that if he breaks the rules, he will be immediately expelled. After this, he sternly asks whether Neil understood the conditions, or whether he is unable to perceive information. Neil immediately starts laughing and says that he doesn't want to fly out, so he won't make a scene. He then notes that the fight will have to wait until the right moment. After this, he turns to the protagonist again, saying that the challenge still stands. Lewis tries to understand why Neil is so angry with him, but decides not to ask. After this, the teacher says that the competition for admission is over and asks not to be late for classes tomorrow. Lewis tries to understand why Neil suddenly started a fight, and Kane adds that Faye is to blame for everything. Faye hits him on the head and says that they were almost expelled, so he doesn't dare blame her. After this, she adds that it is her fault, since she fought during the exam. Time ran out, so the match ended, as neither of them was able to gain an advantage in the fight. However, Faye adds that Neil learned that she lost to Lewis and therefore became eager to fight him. Kane reflects that he has nothing to do here after such a strange scene. He also adds that the rest of the aristocrats will be watching them and will most likely hate them. After a while, we are transported to the Academy store, which is located on the premises of the establishment. Louis goes inside and is surprised at how expensive everything is, and the girl replies that that's not all. She offers him a fluffy, warm-down pillow that costs only 30 silver coins. Louis reflects on the wisdom of his decision to make some money from the perfume and decides to keep some of the money. He also understands that magical items are necessary for training, so even more money is needed. Faye says they will go to the dorm and wish to meet for the magical awakening ritual. Louis looks at them and realizes that he needs to work much harder to get the money. Having solved all his financial problems, he goes to the hostel to take his room. He looks around and hopes that he hasn't been placed with some thug or scoundrel. However, once he gets to his room, he finds that the door is open and someone has thrown out the mattress. As he enters, he hears the voices of students who say that it is better not to quarrel with them. The villains, having surrounded the girl, warn her that if she resists, things will go badly for her. However, despite their dangerous appearance, the girl still does not react to their cries. One of them, the leader of the gang, remarks that she is quite a creature. He grabs her by the tie and asks if she's looking for a fight. Louis decides to intervene to save the girl who he feels cannot defend herself. Suddenly, the villain grabs her hand, and Louis realizes that she feels very strange. Louis reminds that duels are prohibited here, and if they violate the rules, they will simply be expelled. The aristocrats say that they haven't done anything yet, so there's no point in reporting them. One of them adds that he struck the first blow, so the subsequent fight is just self-defense. Louis decides to use a strange martial art to control the enemy's movements. The student who was trying to hit him suddenly turns his hand and accidentally hits his friend. Everyone else looks at Louis in surprise, trying to figure out how he did it. Louis explains that he didn't actually hit anyone and simply touched his colleague's arm. The students are trying to figure out how this pathetic student is trying to deceive them. Louis, meanwhile, makes an even faster movement with his leg to touch his opponent. Immediately after this, the student suddenly kicks back and hits another comrade. He gets seriously injured, but no one understands what is happening to them. Louis suddenly strikes again while everyone else is unaware and unseen. This time, the student feels his body begin to convulse with strange spasms. Louis trips him so that he loses his balance and falls to the floor along with his comrades. The force of the fall proves too great, and he kicks down several more students. They ask him what he is doing, to which Louis replies that he has no control over his body. After control is gradually restored, they accuse Louis of trying to beat them up. Louis explains that there is no need to blame others just because his own body is acting strange. The students say that he just controlled their bodies, which means he is a monster. Louis suddenly feels his heroic ego bruised after being called a monster. Louis takes a few steps to the side and the students ask him what he plans to do with them. However, the girl, who had been watching the whole time, stops him, hinting that it's time to stop. Louis understands her without words and assumes that she wants him to leave everything as is. After this, he adds that if their fights are found out, everyone will have problems, so they better get out of here. The students jump up and say that they need to run from this crazy person like from fire. Louis approaches his neighbor and tells her that he will be living next to her, after which he gives his name. After this, he asks her name, and she cautiously approaches, showing her mattress. The mattress says the girl's name is Cara Candace, but she doesn't say her name out loud. Louis tries to greet her, but she abruptly walks past without saying a word. Immediately after this, she closes her bedroom door, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Louis is not used to being ignored and assumes she is often bullied. Afterwards, he reflects that too much happened on the first day. He expresses hope that everything will be fine tomorrow, but then someone enters the temple. They install a special panel in the hall, which the students use to awaken the elements. The next day, we are transported to the temple of the Arcanist Academy, where the ceremony is taking place. Louis looks at the statue of the goddess and reflects that he had no idea how large this creature was. The priest explains that the students must see the great creator named the goddess Gaia. He says that long ago, this goddess created a world in which people and monsters could exist. After this, he adds that over time, the monsters began to use their colossal natural power. Dragons ruled the skies while giants reigned on land. At the same time, krakens ruled the seas and oppressed people on a permanent basis. Countless people died in the chaos, laying down their lives for a just cause. The goddess becomes enraged and grants blessings to people who lack magical power. As a result, humanity creates battle magic, surviving fierce battles and becoming new rulers. He also states that the students, like the aliens, must receive the blessing of the goddess. Louis reflects on the fact that there is still no mention of the first hero, and he finds this strange. Cara looks at Louis carefully, trying to understand why he is so surprised to hear this legend. The priest approaches them both and tells them that they must follow him so that he can show them the place. After this, he adds that a special board was prepared for them. He notes that if they have a talent for magic, they will be able to sense the elements that are in the air. He also adds that if they are just trash who don't feel anything, then the academy doesn't need them. Lewis tries to understand why the priest is treating him so strangely and turns his gaze to him. There is an immediate ill will between them, and it becomes clear that something is wrong. After this, he says that the ritual will begin soon and asks everyone to take their places. Lewis wonders in his mind if the priest hates him, and he can't find a reason for it. The priest declares that earth, fire, wind, and water are the three great elements. He notes that to bless the goddess, one must clear one's mind and turn to one's feelings. After this, he begins to read a prayer, creating a special energy circle in the air. Over time, a special emblem appears next to this circle, each of which represents an element. Energy begins to flow from these magical seals to fill the hall with magic. All these streams of magic eventually merge and enter the giant staff of the goddess statue. After magic fills the statue, the eyes of this statue begin to glow with a bright fire. The priest looks closely at the students and makes sure that they feel normal. Some of them begin to get scared, feeling the incredible power emanating from the statue. In their consciousness, they seem to find themselves in space, where a goddess appears before them. They also see strange spheres and assume that these are manifestations of the elements in this world. Some fighters immediately feel that they have been chosen by the elements of fire and water, and note that it was quite easy. Nil suddenly creates a giant fire vortex in his place, which frightens everyone else. They are surprised that the poor peasant received two elements at once, earth and fire. They wonder why he is able to control magic, assuming he is a genius. Neil begins to laugh loudly, feeling an incredible power that fills his entire body. The other students jump away from him as he declares that this is exactly what he was talking about. He proudly declares that it makes no difference to him whether it is the elements or someone else in front of him, because everyone will obey him. After this, he looks closely at Louis, who is sitting with his neighbor. He says that one who cannot even awaken will never become his opponent. Louis ignores Neil's words because he has absolutely no interest in this man as an opponent. Louis then wonders why he can't feel anything no matter what. At first, he assumes that this is because he does not come from this world. However, on the other hand, when he fights with Cain, he seems to feel a strange power. Now he feels like his mind is clouded by something, as if he is being pulled into a swamp. Louis grits his teeth and says that his indomitable will is not so easily broken. He remembers himself as a pathetic nobleman and understands that now he will definitely not give up. He starts yelling loudly, ordering the fog to go away as quickly as possible. So he does manage to break the shackles that hold him back, but at first, nothing changes. Only after a few moments does he realize that he too now sees the presence of the goddess and the elements. He looks around and wonders what it all means and how it got here. He looks at 4 different colors and assumes that these are the elements. The priest reflects that he set up a magic circle to separate Louis's mind from the world, but it didn't work. Louis, meanwhile, observes an element of nature that seems very familiar to him. After this, he reaches out his hand to it, but the element suddenly moves a little further. Louis notes that he can feel the element, but for some reason he can't touch it. After this, he tries to catch the circle several more times, but everything turns out to be unsuccessful. This makes him a little angry, and he realizes that he needs to find a way out of this trap. Meanwhile, the priest reflects that even after emerging from mental isolation, he cannot change anything. The whole point is that he uses a special magic circle that blocks the flow between the spirit and the elements. This magical item is used to prevent Louis from going any further, no matter what. The priest reflects that Louis should only see himself for having made so many enemies. Louis accepted the small gift, so he can no longer retreat. He can only enjoy his victory. After some time, the stage should come to an end, but night rises over the university. The aristocrats notice that the 2 students are still trying and laugh, dismissing Louis as a complete dud. Kara looks closely at Louis and notes that he still hasn't been able to awaken his abilities. After this, she carefully lowers her eyes to the place where he is sitting and watches him closely. After a while, she distracts him from his meditation and points her finger at the floor. Louis asks her what she means, and the girl tells him that there is a trap there. Louis looks angrily at his seat and realizes that something is really wrong here. He quickly rises to his feet and prepares to deliver a powerful punch to the spot. His blows are so powerful that they knock out the concrete, opening the way for him to the unknown. Louis looks at the place he just opened in surprise and wonders what it is. He examines the strange broken seal, which he managed to neutralize with a powerful blow. Kara gets to her feet and leaves, hinting that he should act faster. Louis turns to look at her and mentally thanks her for coming to his aid at the last moment. After this, he tries to understand why she was here, suggesting that it could be a coincidence. He also realizes that he has already made many enemies, which means that someone could have set him up on purpose. Lewis looks closely at the priest, assuming he must know something about how this happened. However, he decides that now is not the time for such nonsense, and now everything will begin in earnest. With these thoughts, he begins to concentrate on the cosmic energy that is next to him. After a few moments, different elements begin to concentrate around him. These elements turn into real hydrogen, while this does not happen with other students. Those who are still on the scene are wondering what is happening and why there is such pressure here. They wonder what is happening to these peasants and why they are so sensitive to the elements. The priest wonders how this boy was able to awaken, since even the master could not. As soon as he tries to find out more about the situation, someone puts a hand on his shoulder, instantly stopping him. Director Smith orders everyone to remain where they are and not to interfere, as it could be dangerous. The priest takes a few steps back, indicating that he understood the instruction perfectly. The rest of the aristocrats watch the director and try to understand why he came here so suddenly. The priest reflects that it was very close because his plan was almost revealed. After this, he quickly leaves the church, looking around and meeting his comrade. He discovers a mysterious silhouette sitting near the fountain and looking at him intently. The priest notes that the prank failed, but he doesn't want any trouble and asks people not to approach the silhouette. Stein's brother reflects that this worthless peasant was lucky, but the hardest part is yet to come. Smith orders his assistant to keep an eye on the situation, adding that outsiders cannot be allowed to wreak havoc on the academy. Director Smith says he has removed the obstacles and the process should now go more smoothly. He looks at his favorite student and notes that now it's up to him. Lewis, meanwhile, begins to concentrate on the elements that surround him, falling into a trance. He reflects that he now fully understands what Cain was talking about during their visit to the library. Lewis asked Cain what an element was, and he replied that it was the basis of the world, created by the goddess. Lewis understands that monsters can use magic from birth, but humans need to awaken to do so. Cain explains that the bodies of monsters are no different from the bodies of ordinary people and have the same substance. He shows magical crystals that allow monsters to have such skills. He notes that these crystals contain various elemental powers, which explains the monster's predispositions. He adds that monsters can use magic through their crystals quite freely. People undergo an awakening ritual after which they master one of the elements for use. He also adds that during the ritual, the elements with the best compatibility are attracted to them. Lewis looks closely at the magic crystals and wonders if they are elements. Cain says that everything in this world is made of elements, so crystals are no exception. At some point, Louis suggests that the element of water suits him best, being the basis of all things. After he makes sure that it is the element of water, he carefully tries to touch the ball. Beautiful mermaids living in the ocean instantly appear before his eyes. However, he quickly discovers a giant kraken that lives outside the water. The terrifying pressure from the kraken is felt throughout his body, as if he instantly found himself in the water right in front of him. The energy begins to act destructively on him and causes acute attacks of rage. Louis tries to concentrate on this, but he only manages to draw out the fire element. He reflects that the essence of this magical world is gradually being revealed. He understands that the essence lies in the power of the goddess, who is now fully revealed to him. Director Smith realizes that such energy fluctuations are dangerous. He notes that this is bad and the situation needs to be stabilized. Lewis tries to escape the trap on his own, but his growing rage prevents him from doing so. Principal Smith uses the goddess's barrier skill to try to calm him down. He uses a sealing spell to give Lewis better control over himself. Lewis is confined in a special cage made of 4 elements, each of which helps him cope. Gradually, the color of his hair changes and again acquires the black shade with which he was born. The other students wonder why the director sealed it, but they can't figure out the whole point. Director Smith advises the protagonist to calm down and recommends that he not succumb to the influence of his surroundings. Lewis hears his mentor and understands that now he needs to concentrate on more important things. However, gradually, the incredible emotions that had been building up inside him all this time began to emerge. He slowly regains his breath, feeling himself becoming lighter and lighter. He wipes the sweat from his forehead and reflects on how close the situation was to losing his mind. After this, he looks at the elements again and realizes that they are very similar to elementary particles. In his view, if they were truly the same as elementary particles, they could be controlled and manipulated. Thus, scientists who have dedicated their lives to the study of martial arts also turn out to be good at quantum physics. There truly isn't a single problem or riddle that the protagonist can't solve with a little thought. Even after entering another world, he was able to harness its mysterious essence with incredible ease. He was able to decompose elementary particles into 4 elements and gradually began to study them. Director Smith, watching this process, understands that something truly incredible is happening. He turns to the goddess in the hope that she will give him the strength to keep this student. The vortex of elemental energy that has been spinning all this time becomes even stronger. The students watch this in horror and say they have never seen anything like it. Director Smith realizes that, as expected, Lewis was able to exceed all his expectations. Lewis realizes that the essence of magic is the same as elementary particles, meaning humans can use it just like monsters. Thus, he fully understands the essence of this world and gains the ability to control any element. He thinks about it from a scientific point of view, using many different terms. He realizes that he will be able to create a magic crystal inside his body and use magic similar to Qigong. He continues to concentrate more and more intensely to know the essence of this substance. After a while, his eyes begin to sparkle with the ice element, and he continues to concentrate even harder. However, he loses control of his body again, causing a powerful icing to form around him. Gradually, the cube in which he was imprisoned begins to crack, and icebergs appear around him. Director Smith watches what is happening in amazement, trying to understand how this is possible. After a few moments, the prison cracks and breaks with a characteristic sound. Lewis takes off into the air again, creating a powerful ice storm around himself in a radius of several tens of meters. Director Smith, despite this, looks at him with approval, realizing that his pupil has become stronger. Lewis takes a special enlightened pose, spreading his arms out to the sides. The other students run as far away as they can, realizing that the icy wave is approaching them. However, they prove too slow and turn into ice statues. Gradually, the radius of the snowstorm increases to frightening proportions. Director Smith realizes that the situation is serious and he will have to suppress this force again. He takes out a special artifact and addresses the goddess who lives in heaven. He asks her to summon the power of fire to help fight the ice storm. After this, he concentrates to create a powerful fire barrier that protects him and the students. The firestorm comes into conflict with Lewis's true power, gradually melting the ice. The students gradually begin to move, and the icy shackles are quickly broken. Principal Smith attempts to cross his aura with Lewis's to suppress hers. Lewis is starting to lose ground because he is still too weak and inexperienced. Something strange begins to happen in the temple due to a powerful fiery aura. Outside, in the temple chambers, a strange earthquake is felt, and everyone is trying to figure out what happened. The same thing happens at the training ground where Director Smith's assistant is located. Louis slowly sinks to the ground and gradually comes to his senses. Director Smith wonders what this element is that looks so much like ice. Lewis is still somewhere in the astral projection of this world with his spiritual body. He reflects on how the elements are moving at high speed and seem to merge together. In his view, this means that depending on the combination, a chemical reaction may occur. He understands that the merged elements of wind and water have completely filled his meridians and streams. He tries to figure out what he needs to do about it and decides to talk the situation over with someone a little. When he comes to, he finds the director standing in front of him and asks what happened. Director Smith snaps his hands sharply to remove the spells from the current area. Lewis asks him what it all means and gets an explanation of what is happening. After this, the giant fiery aura is compressed into a small art and sent to the director's artifact. Principal Smith watches closely and asks Lewis if he understands what he has done. Lewis notices that his actions have knocked several students unconscious. He smiles and notes that he actually noticed that the director saved them. Director Smith turns to his colleague and informs him that he is returning to the office, leaving the cleaning to him. After this, he orders them to follow him and notes that he probably has questions. Louis nods quickly and decides to follow the director to get out of here as quickly as possible. The trap that was planned against the main character failed, and everyone can only be happy for him. In his office, Director Smith congratulates him on his awakening and notes that he has awakened 4 elements at once. Lewis confirms that this is indeed the case and that he did indeed manage to set a new record. After this, the director shows him 4 crystal balls at once, which ended up in his hands. Principal Smith never ceases to be amazed by the student's talent, constantly complimenting his incredible talents. After this, he hands Lewis the book and explains that it once helped him master the control of magic. He adds that the book is suitable for wind and earth magic, so Faye and Miliana will be able to help him. After some time, the director turns to his assistant named Kylie and says that she can join. A few moments later, a beautiful girl who was previously at the training ground appears. Director Smith explains that this girl is his trusted assistant. He also notes that from now on, Kylie will stand by his side to ensure that nothing happens to him. Kylie states that it would be better if they moved to another place because it is not safe here. After some time, They find themselves in a place where Great Master Smith trains and meditates. Kylie turns attentively to the protagonist and asks him to show her the element. Lewis explains that he discovered the element by accident during an awakening ritual and was able to synthesize it. He notes that when two elements accelerate and mix, a new element is born. After this, he proudly declares that he has named the mixture of water and wind the element of ice, which no one has seen before. Director Smith notes with surprise that he has never heard of elements being able to be mixed. Kylie says she can't believe her eyes and confirms that everything happened just as the director said. A sly smile spreads across her face and she pauses for a moment. After this, she rushes forward, showing that she also wants to feel this element. She begins to attack Lewis, but he quickly intercepts her attacks with his power. After this, he decides to launch a powerful counterattack by touching Kylie with an ice touch. After making sure that she won't be able to parry the blow, he decides to strike quickly. Kylie barely has time to react to the approaching attack, but still manages to take action. Lewis doesn't have time to land a powerful blow, but that wasn't his goal since Kylie isn't his enemy. Kylie is acutely aware that she has become slower and realizes that it is the power of the ice element. She approaches the director and asks if it is possible to connect the two elements, to which he replies that it is not possible. The director notes that since the advent of magic, people have been endlessly studying its power. He adds that many geniuses have dedicated their lives to this cause, but no one has been able to connect the elements. Most can only control one element, and only a few manage to awaken multiple elements. Even the most powerful wizard in the Empire could only control 3 elements at a time. He once also tried to connect the 2 elements, but he failed. Principal Smith says his body and mind couldn't handle it. Lewis understands that people usually can't handle the combination of elements, but he is too unique and brilliant. Principal Smith confirms that this is indeed the case, as humans must exert force to wield magic. He adds that trying to manage multiple elements would cause problems. The elements would collide inside the person, resulting in the loss of life. Kylie watches Lewis closely and realizes that he has limitless potential. From her point of view, he can even compete with saints whom no one has seen for a long time. Kylie decides to restore her body using the element of fire and merge with it. After this, she faces Louis in open combat again to test him. It doesn't take more than a few seconds before she rushes into battle, trying to land as many blows as possible. Director Smith explains that a wizard once hypothesized that it might be possible to control multiple elements. He assumed that to do this, one would need to have a dragon-like body that could withstand the impact. He also suggested that it was possible to use magic through magic crystals, like monsters do. Lewis wonders what the results of this great master's research were. Director Smith says the results were disastrous and were eventually banned. He adds that he never thought that anyone would break this taboo, as it was beyond comprehension. Lewis realizes that by directing many elements along different streams, he has avoided a collision. Kylie kicks him and tells him not to get too cocky. Lewis notes that he himself understands perfectly well the meaning of what is happening, and warns that people will soon find out about it. He adds that this could be the source of problems that befell him in a past life. Kylie warns that if his secret becomes known, no one can predict the consequences. She also reports that the director ordered him to be protected, although she herself does not like problems. Lewis explains that he simply awakened the water element, and the ice element is one of the uses. Director Smith watches him in surprise and asks what he means by method of application. Louis states that his willpower is stronger than all the people in this world because he is unique. After this, Lewis asks the teacher to attack him with the fire element again and waits for her to get closer. Using the ice element, he notes that water has a very interesting property. By creating another introductory sphere, he states that it can be influenced by strong pressure. After this, he creates a small, long shield to protect himself from the fire strike. Kylie continues to move steadily closer to him, then wonders what this all means. Director Smith is also watching what is happening and understands that he will soon explain everything to the main character. Lewis notes that under pressure, water changes in an interesting way and takes the form of super hard ice. Principal Smith asks himself in surprise how this is even possible because it is not magic. Kylie also asks how he was able to turn ordinary water into ice that does not melt in fire. Lewis explains that the liquid is capable of changing shape under intense pressure. Director Smith realizes that this man has incredible knowledge and invites him to share it. Kylie asks if he's really going to protect the child, since what happened could have been a coincidence. Principal Smith says that some of the magical effects described in the books are also the result of coincidences. Kylie states that if he says so, she will take it for granted, noting that the boy will cause trouble. She promises that she will protect him at any cost, if that is the director's wish. After a few moments, she creates a powerful energy sphere of fire and disappears into it. Principal Smith notes that classes start tomorrow and it's time for him to go home. He gives Lewis a method for restoring mental strength and advises not to overdo it. Lewis returns home, thinking that he doesn't feel like sleeping at all. Finally, he opens the door to his room and carefully steps inside, looking around. He looks at Kara and asks why she is still awake, but she decides not to answer. Lewis asks if she loves him, and the girl quickly nods. Lewis adds that she actually saved him, and the director said that a rare artifact was installed there. He asks how she noticed the trap, but she's in no hurry to explain. After this, Kara gets up from the table and hands him a small envelope. Lewis looks at the envelope in surprise and realizes that it has the logo of the trade guild on it. After that, he asks her if she thought that by helping him, she herself would become a target for dangerous people. Entering her room, Kara says that she is very grateful to him for his help. Lewis looks closely at the door and assumes that this was the price for saving him on the first day they met. The next day, they find themselves at the training grounds of the Arcanist Academy. A rather outrageous trainer appears in front of them, who explains that he is their teacher, Derek. He adds that under his guidance, they will all get perfect bodies. The other students watch him and wonder what this nonsense is, assuming he has gone crazy. Lewis notes that the coach says everything correctly, because the body and mind are the basis of martial arts. Derek hears these words immediately and is very impressed by the students' insight. Within moments, he is behind Lewis and they barely notice. After this, he evaluates their physical fitness and notes that it is simply ideal. He immediately begins to feel Louis' body, noticing that every part of his body is perfectly trained. He notes that he admires students who work hard to train their bodies. After this, he turns his gaze to Kane and notes that there is not a single extra muscle on his body. He adds that great families are not what they used to be. After this, he steps aside and says that we need to follow the traditions of the academy. He states that first-year students should see how to use the exercise equipment. The seniors enter, led by Stein's brother, who says that the current freshmen are losing even to Cherney. They tell what it's like to look down on geniuses and promise to show the difference between them. Lewis and Kane look at them with some skepticism, realizing that they are still the strongest in this world. Derek orders them not to chat, but just show them how to use the equipment. One of the seniors steps forward and announces that he will be the first to show the freshmen how to train. He demonstrates a modern-day arm training machine and explains its use. He also adds that the simulator's special feature is the use of earth magic. He notes that each weight on the machine weighs about a ton, so freeing your hands will not be easy. The aristocrats watch in amazement at such power and remark that they have never encountered anything like it. They also notice the girl who maintains her balance while spinning at incredible speed. Plus, they're looking at a high school student running on a track with 250 kilograms on each leg. Derek informs them that they can now train and warns them not to get hurt.